It's 11:59 at Gun Owners Radio, and this is the Penn Patriot, music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I've got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, and another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind American lines, this is your song.
Everybody seems to come in and say, are people buying guns to protect themselves from ICE? And it's just the opposite. Not a single person is coming to me and say, I need to get a gun to protect myself in my home because I'm afraid these federal agents are going to bang in my door. The vast majority of people are coming in saying, I need self-defense because the lawlessness that's happening around these ICE operations and the things that are happening outside of all this going on is what's really gotten people interested in exploring their Second Amendment rights for self-defense. When we teach our class, we teach a concealed carry, meaning we don't want you to carry it open because we don't want you to have that attention. I hate to see the lawlessness. I'm for the letter of law. I'm pro law enforcement, and I hate to see people being afraid or not willing to stand up and say that. I think this will all feed out. Unfortunately, it's a painful experience, and people have suffered through that process, and I'd like to see that just come to an end.
Just keep in your thoughts and prayers. How about that?
There you go. I got to tell you guys, I am about done talking about Minneapolis.
It's been a long road.
And I think it was interesting, though. First off, it's interesting. It's always interesting when people have an interest in purchasing firearms for the first time, which is always interesting. But the point he was making, and I don't think he was realizing how strong the point he was making, is that it's not like ICE and law enforcement is operating all over the U.S.
Yeah.
But people in Minneapolis, in the Minneapolis area, are out purchasing firearms. And they're doing it not because of ICE, but because of the lunatics in Minneapolis that are out fighting in the streets and doing all their ridiculousness, which is, it's so, I mean, I remember when San Francisco was the weirdest city in the United States.
I feel like it's been a while since that's been the case.
Yeah. San Francisco's been pretty quiet. I know, like Portland and then Seattle kind of, you know, but Minneapolis by far, even more so than Seattle, even more so than Portland, has taken the #1 spot in the United States as the most ridiculous, weirdest, extremist city in the United States. And I didn't see that coming.
That whole like weird city thing that they did, was that in Seattle or Portland?
Yeah,
I can't remember.
CHOP or whatever.
Yeah, where they like weren't allowing law enforcement in and people were just like dying in the like city walls or whatever. That still is pretty high up there on my list of crazy things that have happened in this country. But yeah, Minneapolis is trying to outdo that.
It seems like what's happening over there is much like what we experienced back in 2020 with our riots here in La Mesa. You know, the people are seeing the lawlessness and the demeanor of the people around them. And
well, did you see? I saw an actual news report where some activists in Minneapolis set up a roadblock and a checkpoint.
Yes.
Because,
the irony.
Yeah, because they wanted to know who was coming into. They wanted to know if ICE was coming into their neighborhoods.
Open borders. Open borders.
So
let's make a border around
bizarre.
our community. I was like, what is happening?
So welcome to Gun Owners Radio, everybody. My name is Michael Schwartz. I'm the executive director of San Diego County Gun Owners. When I'm not one of the co-hosts here at Gun Owners Radio, we also have Dakota Adelphia, who is the chapter leader for A Girl and a Gun, and also a CCW instructor.
Yep.
And all kinds of cool stuff.
All sorts of things.
And Alicia Curtin.
hi,
You are an instructor for Discount Gun Mart.
I am correct.
And
Second A Firearms.
second, yeah. And so here we are. So welcome. A couple things we wanted to talk about real quick is, first off, did you know that we actually have a bunch of resources on, some of them are on the Gun Owners Radio website, some of them are on the San Diego County Gun Owners website, and one in particular I wanted to show is we actually have a CCW carry guide. Things are extremely strange in the state of California when it comes to where you can and can't carry, thanks to SB2. There is, of course, a lawsuit in process that we're hopefully going to win. But in the meantime, and we've been updating it, if you go to, it's sdcgo.org/CCW, right, Rich? Yeah. Go to sdcgo.org/ccw and you will see a guide, and we'll show you that. It's basic. It's not comprehensive. In other words, it doesn't show every single place you can and can't carry, but some of the more commonly asked questions are answered there. I used to get honestly, since we came up with this guide, the questions on where we can and can't carry have definitely decreased.
Yeah, for sure.
I used to get questions all the time. And so
Well, it's nice because I still get questions all the time, but I just say, go check out www. Because it's, I could go answer the question by hand, or I could just give them this nifty tool that they can use, forever and share with their friends and everything.
Print out, keep a copy of it in your car. Keep it posted so that you just have that reminder available to you.
There you go. Make a poster, hang it on your bedroom wall.
Well, and things are always changing, right? Like these laws are constantly evolving. Things are always getting added or taken away. And so I always tell folks, like, don't save the PDF, just bookmark the link to the website. That way, every time you go to check it, it's the most recent copy, most up to date. It just got updated actually last week or something, right?
We just updated it, so it's the current version. Don't save it to your computer and then go look at it in 2 years because it might be out of date by then. Yeah.
We'll keep the one on the website
Hopefully
up to date.
Out of date.
So check.
We sure hope all those
Hopefully,
SB2 things go.
Yeah, check it out. www.sdcgo.org/ccw.
W.
Dakota, you have a cool event coming up.
Oh, I do have a cool event coming up. You can read more about it. Now we have a nifty little landing page, gunownersradio.com/LGRGC-benefit. That's the short version of the link. And that is our benefit match that we're doing on March 1st. A Girl and a Gun San Diego, along with a bunch of local sponsors, are putting together this match for two of our members who are also just pro Second Amendment folks here in the San Diego community. I'm sure a lot of you know them or have seen them at a range event. Laura Smith has cancer, and we're trying to do some fundraising for her for that. And then Denise Brown recently lost her husband to a heart attack, and they're in their 40s. They have a 10-year-old son, and so we're trying to support her as she, kind of navigates this new normal of just being a single income family. And so the hope is that we get to raise a ton of money, and all the proceeds are going to go to Laura and Denise, and they can use that for their, medical expenses and bills and everything like that. The event itself is it's got a lot of pieces to it, but we're going to have a USPSA style match, a steel challenge match, and then we've just got some fun range day experiences. So you can come out and, learn how to use pepper spray. You can hopefully shoot some suppressed handguns. We're trying to get that figured out, have an FFL that we're chatting with about bringing some cool toys for people to play with. So we're going to have a bunch of different options out there for you guys, and it's an afternoon on Sunday, March 1st. If you register for the USPSA match, you have to be there by noon. But if you're just coming out to check us out or shoot steel challenge or whatever else you'd like to do, participate in the silent auction or, win some cool prizes, you can come anytime between 1 and 4 p.m. And then we'll be wrapping up by hopefully around 6. So it'll be a really fun afternoon. Lots of opportunities to spend money. We'll have some food for sale. We're going to have snacks and drinks and shirts and all sorts of fun stuff. So awesome. Bring cash and come have a good time out at Lemon Grove Rod and Gun March 1st.
March 1st. That's very cool. I'm looking forward. I'm so sorry to hear about the two people in our community that are struggling. But I think this is very cool that this community is coming together and you're leading the charge, and that we're going to at least try to take some of the pressure off their situation. Yes. So that's very, very cool.
Yeah, if you're an FFL or if you know an FFL owner, reach out to me because we're definitely looking for some more folks to sponsor some stuff. We're looking for ammunition to be used at the event. We're looking for some more silent auction items. We've got a couple of handguns donated already for the silent auction, but we're looking for a couple more firearms for that silent auction table as well. So if you feel called to support the cause, reach out to me. What's my email address? Dakota@gunownersradio.com. Okay, yeah, Dakota@gunownersradio.com. I don't use it very much, obviously, but reach out to me. Would love to have extra support.
Okay, cool. On the show, we have a couple of cool things. We actually have 3 interviews. We have Rob McNellis, who's a city council member out in Santee. We want to talk a little bit about the role he played in helping San Diego get CCWs even before Bruen. We're interviewing Alan Beck. He's an attorney who just argued in front of the Supreme Court about the vampire rule, SB2. We were just talking about the CCW guide. Hopefully we can fill that green section of the CCW carry guide up after the Supreme Court issues their decision. So he just argued. We're going to talk to him. I think the decisions probably come out in June. That's usually what the time frame is, but who knows. And then we're going to talk to candidate for California governor, Steve Hilton, about strategy. He and I have a difference of opinion on strategy when it comes to attempting to win in California if you're a Republican and running for public office. So thank you very much for watching, and here we go.
When your rights are on the line and the fight gets real, you need a lawyer who knows the deal. From gun laws to courtrooms, he'll stand by you. John Dillon fights for the red, white, and blue. John Dillon defending your rights, keeping bear arms with truth and might. From GVROs to self-defense calls, Dillon Law Group, he fights for us all. When freedom's under fire, who you gonna call? Dillon Law Group, justice for all. DillonLawGP.com.
Okay, our next guest is running for governor of California. His name's Steve Hilton. I'm sure you've heard of his name. If you've ever watched Fox News in the past 10 or so years, or if you're paying attention at all in the state of California, you know who Steve is. Now, normally when we have candidates on, we want to know their background and where do they stand on this and that and the other thing. This isn't that kind of interview. Steve is very well known. If you want to know more about him, definitely check out his Wikipedia page, check out his campaign page. But Steve and I had got into a discussion off the air about strategy. Yeah. And I'd like to bring him on. It's something I've been talking about for a while, and I'm noticing that his strategy has shifted to be very counter to the strategy that I've been proposing for a couple of months and talked about, basically saying that, hey, there's only one path to victory, Steve. So, Steve, the case I have made is that in the state of California, there is only one path to victory for a Republican, and that is if two Republicans make it to the runoff in June. Now, we're in a very unique situation in that we have 2 viable, strong Republican candidates. We don't have an incumbent, and we have 4 or 5 or as many as 6 Democrats who are running, who are all viable, who are actually splitting the vote in the favor of the 2 Republicans. So we're in a very unique situation. And my assertion is that there is no path to victory for a single Republican to make it through and run against any Democrat, and that the only path to victory, although a long shot, everything's a long shot, but a long shot is for you and the other strong Republican, Chad Bianco, to make it through the election in June, the primary, and then boom, we at least have one of 2 Republicans running. And I've noticed that your strategy recently has been to go on the offensive against Chad Bianco, which of course would be counter to that. So go ahead. What are your thoughts on everything I just said?
So I totally appreciate the idea there. I've heard it many times, and if you look at the data right now, if you look at the polling, there's you can see why you'd come to that view, because very consistently for the last couple of months now, in most of the polling, Chad and I have been in the top 2. Sometimes Chad is ahead, sometimes I'm ahead. There's one exception. The latest poll I saw, Chad was actually 3rd, and I was, but not by much. But generally speaking, most of the polls, top 2 Republicans. I understand that's a very, very unusual situation, but I don't think it's going to be a static situation, because there's a general point I want to make, and then I want to get into the specifics. I think that, first of all, the idea that the Democratic Party is just going to surrender California, the crown jewel, the biggest state, the one where they have the most power and dominance that really supports them through the rest of the country. They're going to just stand by and allow two Republicans to get into the top two systems that they pushed in order and therefore guarantee that they're locked out of power, at least at the top of the executive branch. I just think it's not realistic. I think that's, they are crazy, hungry for power, and they're not just going to stand by and let that happen. That's the general point. The specific point is, if you look at the actual candidates and you look at this race, it is what you're seeing is there's definitely two tiers of Democrats. Yes, they're splitting the vote, but a bunch of them at the bottom end are going nowhere, and they're not going to persist. They run out of money, or the Ian Calderon and Betty Yee and Tony Thurman, they're each getting 2, 3, 4% of the vote. That's not going to stay that way. They're not going to keep going all the way to June, because they're loyal party people, and it's how they do it in the Democratic Party. They'll be offered something else or encouraged out and do something else or whatever. So first of all, you're going to get those numbers will go up for the top tier Democrats. So that's Katie Porter and Eric Swalwell are the two leading Democrats right now in that higher tier. You could potentially put Tom Steyer in there as well. In certain polls, he's a little bit high. Of course, he's a billionaire who's got all the money it takes, and he's been moving up. So you're going to see, and right now you've got a process going on in Sacramento. It's a kind of beauty parade that's going on right now. Literally, we're speaking on February the 6th. We're taping this, and I've just seen reports that Eric Swalwell's in Sacramento right now, sucking up to the unions. They're all out there trying to get the big unions endorsement of money, SEIU and so on.
But Steve,
so
that's an important point. That's an important point. Let's hang on for a second there. So first is you said, hey, it's not a realistic possibility that Democrats are going to allow two Republicans to make the runoff. I agree. They're not going to allow it. But it doesn't mean they're going to make it happen. And I think one important point is, first off, I think that this is the strongest group of Democrats when it comes to viability that I've ever seen. Usually it's one or two really truly viable, and the rest are pretty weak. I think there are a good 4 or 5 that are really truly viable here. But the other part of that is none of them are the union pick. It's not like 1 or 2 or 3 unions said, hey, this is our person and we're going to run them. And that's an important distinction in that it makes them less viable. In other words, they don't have a lot of breadth to their support. So it's not like the unions are going to be like, hey, we're going to pull this person out. All these people, these 4 or 5 top Democrats, they're strong on their own. They're not at the mercy of the Democratic Party. They're not at the mercy of the unions. But the other thing is, it's not realistic that Democrats are going to allow that to happen. That doesn't mean we can't outwork them. But also, it's not realistic to think that a Republican can win against a Democrat in this state. So why not go for a strategy, although a long shot, at least has a chance of winning?
Well, there's another very important part of it that's just happened, because I think it's worse than that. It's worse than a long shot. It's actually much worse, which is this, and this is the real risk. You've got. I don't actually agree that I don't think people like Tony Thurmond or Becerra or Villaraigosa are going anywhere. They're just not breaking it. I think it's Eric Swalwell or Katie Porter. And the big unions haven't endorsed yet, the really big ones. You're right that many of the unions have spread it around, and the endorsements, the nurses and the carpenters, wherever, they're going all over the place. The big ones, the SEIU, the teachers, the CTA, they haven't yet endorsed, and they're going to have the real muscle and the $10 million independent expenditure, not just a $1 million independent expenditure. So they are waiting to pick, and they're going to coordinate. So I think there will be one that emerges, and I think it will be either Swalwell or Katie Porter. And right now, it feels like it's Swalwell who will be the dominant Democrat. And I think they will, with the help and both the money and the organizing muscle of the unions, will start moving up and start to overtake, if nothing else changes, me and Chad. But there's another really important development. Matt Mahan, the mayor of San Jose, who's just entered the race. And, I'm in the Bay Area. I know very well what's going on because I know a lot of the people involved. And there's this mood among a lot of the Silicon Valley tech community, got a huge amount of money. And they also have this belief that a Republican can't win. And then many of them have said to my face, we love you, Steve. You're great. We totally agree with you. Republican can't win. We got to have the least crazy Democrat. Their money was going to Rick Caruso. Rick Caruso decides not to run. And so almost overnight, there's this now notorious Signal chat, about 400 tech bros on it, and they're all trying to coordinate. And they say, right, our guy, Matt Mahan, mayor of San Jose. And they're saying, I mean, on the Signal chat, the amount of money described was we need $100 million, $100 million to put him in the top two. So actually what you're going to have is a union Democrat and a tech-funded Democrat. That's and Matt there right now. We know that Matt Mahan is the tech guy. I mean, he's raised in the last
Why
week.
doesn't that split the vote more? And doesn't that give you?
No, they're going to overtake. They're not going. This is not realistic. And so the real risk.
How is it less realistic than? Let's say you win. Let's say Chad drops out. You make it through. You win. You're running against the Democrat. How is the idea of two Republicans making it into the primary? How is that less realistic than you winning against the Democrat?
It's not. That's not the worst case.
In a statewide race in the last like 30 years, there hasn't been anybody that's gotten over 40% or 25 years since like Schwarzenegger. There hasn't been anybody that's won a statewide of any kind.
I'll get to that in a second. But that's not the worst case. The worst case, and this is what we're heading to, is not that it's Democrat, Republican, and it's going to be difficult to win. The worst case is it's two Democrats. That's a much more likely scenario. If we have two Democrats in the final, which is where we're heading right now, Matt Mahan and probably Eric Swalwell, then it's a disaster for the Republican Party. It will lose every down ballot race because Republicans won't show up to vote. The turnout on the Republican side will collapse. We'll definitely lose all the congressional seats. Voter ID may be in jeopardy, which we're all very confident about right now because it's got on the ballot and that's fantastic. But, you know, that's going to be Republican voters that drive the vote for voter ID. If there's no one in the governor's race, that will collapse. All the down ballot races, Assembly, Senate, supervisors, cities, the Republican vote will collapse if we don't have a governor candidate. And right now, I think that's where we're heading if Chad and I continue to split the vote. That's the scenario I'm trying to avoid. It's worse than it's going to be difficult. We're going to have a complete calamitous collapse of the Republican vote if we don't have a Republican in the governor's race.
I don't agree that that's where the math is. I don't think that. I think on the one hand, you're saying we've got to stop splitting the vote, but then you're completely the opposite opinion when it comes to the Democrats. I think that if this the mayor of San Jose jumps in, I think it further supports the case. You guys are both getting about 20%. I don't think there's going to be some big shift or miracle that's that's going to move you guys either direction, and I don't think that there's going to be some weird shift in the Democratic Party.
Well, look, just without anything really changing, just the base case here, without campaigning in a general election, is that, and it's been very stable for the last 20 years. The last time we won statewide was 2006, Arnold's re-election, and the Republican vote in California would be very stable, 40%, up or down a couple of points. Let's just call it 40%. They have 60%, we have 40%. And so let's just call it 2020, right? The math is very clear. These people are going to, they don't need 30, 40, but they just need 21. By the way, we're not at 20%. It's 17 or 18, or the last poll, I was 14 and Chad was 11. So actually it's not, it's too close for comfort. I think that what you're going to see, here's another way of thinking about it. Maybe you'll take this point, which is it's too risky, because basically what you're going to see is a bunching of candidates. You're pretty much where we're heading is 4 candidates around 20%. That's where we're heading right now. Me and Chad.
I think it's 4 or 5 candidates around 20%. I think you're right. Yes.
Okay, and so it's a crapshoot, and you could easily end up in this ridiculous top, especially with all their shenanigans and the way that they manipulate the vote and cheat and whatever with 2 Democrats. That's a massive risk. Whereas if we get behind one Republican now, it's a guarantee that you have a Republican in the top 2.
But it's also a guarantee loss.
I don't agree with that, because now let's get to the main question you're driving at, which is your assumption that a Republican can't win. I want to challenge that in the following ways. Number one, since the last governor's race in 2022, opinion has moved very strongly against the Democrats on that basic question of, is it time for change? So then if you look at PPIC polling or the other polling, that number of, is the state going in the right direction, wrong direction, has gone very negative against the Democrats. It's now 60%, 65%. There's a mood for change. There is a majority who think we're going in the wrong direction. That's number one.
There wasn't a move for change in the last proposition that redrew 5.
But that wasn't about California. That was just some totally incomprehensible thing to most people.
100% about California. That's all it was about.
No, it was about congressional districts, not state governance. And the other point,
California's congressional districts.
Yes, but not about
nothing.
gas prices.
I understand.
It had nothing to do with gas prices for California. It had nothing to do with,
it had nothing to do with. You don't think any
bills.
of those people were voting on gas prices or Trump or immigration?
We tried to make that happen. We tried. I tried very hard. I campaigned very strongly to defeat Prop 50. And I agree with you that that's what we tried to do. Remember, the turnout was derisory. It just wasn't an election that caught the imagination that this is the future of my kids, my life, my job. That wasn't the real subject of the Prop 50. I don't think that's a good proxy.
What was the real subject?
Something incomprehensible thing about districts that no one really understood. So I just don't think that is a good proxy for a general election.
Let's talk about So
first of all, there's a majority for change in California. Number two,
they say that every 2 years, every election. This is it, big red wave.
No, they don't have a strong candidate. They don't have a dominant Newsom type candidate. These people are incredibly flawed.
That supports my Katie two Porter. Republicans in June idea. They don't have a big, strong candidate. You're right. They're splitting the vote.
Right, but they're not going to, because they're going to have all the tech money behind Mahan and the unions behind someone else, probably Swalwell. So they're going to be very strongly dominant. You're going to have those two. That's the risk here, is that we have a lockout, a shutout.
Okay, so why should it be you over Chad Bianco?
Well, because I very strongly argue that I've got the right combination of experience. I've got business experience, government reform experience, policy expertise across the board. For 3 years, I've been traveling the state, meeting people, organizations, businesses, doing the work, county events, learning about the issues, developing policy plans. I know what I'm talking about.
I think you have policy experience. You have no executive experience. You've never held public office before.
Well, I think that's a good thing. I think we're sick of the outsiders who are just totally making a mess of it. The corruption, the useless, insider attitude. I think that's what needs to change. So I said in the debate, it's time for an outsider to shake things up. That's exactly what we need.
So would you agree, though, that you and Chad Bianco, generally on the issues, if you look at immigration, you look at crime, you look at taxes, if you generally, you guys agree. You generally are holding
very much so.
So I'm curious as to lately the attack ads that you've chosen to use.
Well, we're not running any ads, but
well, the posts. Sorry, the posts on social media and that sort of thing. Why have you chosen to use the types of attack ads against Chad? I think we both agree that Chad's a good man. Do we agree?
Look, I'm just talking about his record. I don't know Chad well enough. I've tried over the months.
One of the attack ad that you ran was about BLM and how he bent the knee during a riot.
It was an argument I made in the debate, the first TV debate on Tuesday. We aren't running any ads.
No, I'm sorry. The comments on your Facebook page. Sorry, I'm using ads incorrectly. The comments on your social media from your campaign are saying, "Hey, Chad Bianco bent the knee to BLM during a riot." Not exactly true. And I think the implication against
people can watch the video for themselves at blmbianco.org.
Okay, but what point are you making by bringing that up right now? What are you saying about Chad Bianco?
That he has too much baggage because
why is that baggage?
Because Republicans hate it. It's a universal.
That's it, though, isn't it? That Republicans hate it. You don't actually think that he... the implication is that he has something in common with BLM.
No, it's not that at all.
BLM bested him, or that he was beaten by BLM. You don't actually believe that, right?
It's two things. Number one, let me get to the second. Do these 2 points in order. Number one, in 2020 during the BLM riots, and I was watching all that like everyone else. I didn't know Chad. I never heard of Chad. Never knew anything about him. And I wasn't. Based in the Bay Area. I didn't see any of that coverage. What I did see is Eric Garcetti, the mayor of LA, and exactly the same thing happened to him. They made him come out. I believe it was his house. I remember seeing the pictures, the TV images of the mayor of LA on his knee, taking a knee for BLM, exactly as Chad did. And I remember thinking
taking
at the
a
time,
knee for BLM. That's it. Listen, Chad was in a uniform with his men, protecting his community on the front lines. He prevented a riot. He didn't go to a riot and then take a knee. He prevented a riot.
I understand.
Why wouldn't he be exalted for him? But you're using it against him in an insincere way, Steve. And I don't think that's.
Well,
I think that shows a lack of character.
Let me get to the second point, right? The first point is I saw the images of Garcetti doing it to placate the mob, and I thought that's the most pathetic thing I've ever seen. If you're a leader, you don't do that. You don't bend the knee to the mob. But the second, and so that says something about character and strength in the face
are you saying,
of
wait a minute,
provocation.
You're saying it was a leadership problem on Bianco's part?
Secondly, and in my conversations with Republicans, in many ways, this is the real point, which is that instead of making the argument that you're making on Chad's behalf, he's not saying that. He's actually saying that it's not true that he took a knee at all and that he was praying. That's what he's saying. And he said that many, many times. It's on the record. And so that's the part that I hear all the time in relation to this. Why doesn't he own it? Why won't he just own it? Why won't he make the argument that you've just made?
I think
he never does. He says, I was praying.
I think there's a strength in that.
That's why we say, watch the video, blmbianco.org, and ask yourself, what do you see there? That's all I'm saying.
I think there's a strength. I think that you're right. I think that he should have had a stronger statement, when it comes to what happened, with BLM. But I think that the implication that your campaign is using against him is for political reasons, and it lacks sincerity. You didn't care about this 6 months ago. You care about this now because you feel like it'll give you a political advantage when you're trying to bump him out of the race so that you can make it through the primary. And that kind of politics against a guy like Chad Bianco, not perfect, but a good, solid
what's been happening,
public statement.
Let me explain what's been happening
servant.
the last couple of months, actually. So I've met Chad many times. We've been at events together. We have a perfectly civil and cordial relationship. We've spoken on the phone. I've said to many people close to him, and I've said it directly, that I would, and for a month, I've been seeing this scenario of a split vote that lets the Democrats in. Okay, you and I disagree about that, but that's been in my mind for a long time, looking at the way this race is unfolding. And so my hope has always been that we could work together, that Chad and I could work together and bring the party together. For months, that's been my attitude. I have not said a single word negatively about him in all that period. That is not
until it politically benefits you. Now you are.
Until we face the situation of having two Democrats in the top two. And it's my responsibility to do something about that, if we care about saving California. But I just want to make this point, which is that is not the attitude that Chad has taken. So I've seen him say, and many people have seen him say it at events, and his supporters are saying it very strongly, very strong attacks on me for the last few months, increasing in volume this year. So the idea that I'm the one that suddenly changed the tone and tenor of this campaign is totally false. But now we're in a serious situation, which is that we have to get behind one Republican. It's an election. Of course, I'm making the argument that I am the strongest candidate to defeat the Democrats and turn around California. That's why I'm running. Now, Chad thinks the same way. Let's make our case. It is an election. It's a primary election. My point is,
first off, you're right. You and I disagree. I think the math clearly shows that there is absolutely no chance of victory if one of you makes it in through the primary. The only way, and it's a slim chance.
I'm not
is
so
if two
defeatist.
people-
I think we can beat them because they've had 16 years of one-party rule. Everyone knows it's time for change. They don't have a strong candidate.
I don't think it's.
and I'm
I
very
don't think-
confident I can beat them.
I think a basic knowledge of math is not defeatist, Steve. I mean, I think if you look at numbers and understand that 1 + 1 = 2 is not defeatist.
Okay,
It's
let me
very,
get.
very
This is the
obvious to
final
me.
point because I have to jump off. I'm going to give you some numbers as well that I think is the basis of the argument, and in addition to what I've already given in terms of the majority of Californians who think it's time for change. Now, it's a midterm election.
Change what though? Change
Direction politically. It's a midterm election. It's a midterm election, and everyone who knows anything about elections and politics knows that in a midterm election, it's all about turnout. Okay, so if you look at the actual numbers,
and you're hurting turnout with your strategy.
Let's look at the actual numbers. So if you take the average to project what the turnout will be in November this year, let's take the average of the last two. That's what typically is done, 2018, 2022. So the total number of votes we can estimate in November, 11.7 million. So to win, you need about 5.9 million votes. And people say, well, there's not enough Republican votes to win. It's not true. President Trump in 2024, without campaigning here, got 6.1 million votes. Steve Garvey got 6.3 million. There are enough Republican votes to win in California. We just need to get them out to vote. Voter ID is going to be a huge motivator for turnout in November. And there are other things we can do. A good, effective ground game. Those things work. We saw it with the presidential election. That's why the president won all the 7 swing states. It's the idea that we can't get those Republican voters who just over a year ago voted for President Trump to turn out in November this year. It's not true. It's not going to be easy, but it's possible to do it. And that's what we should focus on.
I absolutely agree on that. I totally agree that turning out getting Republicans to show up is possible and it's crucial. But I think that your BS attacks, your lack of character, your false implications against a guy like Chad Bianco
I invite people
is not motivating Republicans. It's making them stay home.
People
I'll
who
tell you
will
this.
use that-
I thought I was like, hey, either one of these guys would be good. But the last couple of days and this interview has convinced me you're right. I think we should go behind one candidate.
Well, I
that
think
candidate's Chad Bianco.
Okay, well, I understand that some people will have that reaction, but here's the final point I'd make. Whether or not I make these arguments, you can be absolutely sure that the Democrat machine will use that to depress the Republican vote because they know that that Republicans hate that. Look, we don't agree, but I appreciate the opportunity to make the case. That's what it's all about. It's a conversation. It's democracy. It's elections, and people have different views. So obviously, I didn't persuade you, but I think it's really important that we actually do what we think is right to save California from another 4 years of these idiots in charge. That's what this is all about for me. It always has been.
Okay, I know you got to go. Last thing I'm going to say is Chad Bianco right now has about as many supporters as you do, and by going into your campaign social media and tearing down the candidate that they like right now is not bringing the party together. It is not making you look good. It is not helping Republicans get out the vote. It's these false implications, attacking a guy like Chad Bianco. I think it's completely.
I understand that people have different reactions, but I think, I appreciate.
And it's not just a mistake. I think it's a reflection of,
I think
this whole
we
I think people want
agree.
change. I think you're acting just like all these other politicians. You're acting like just another politician. You're doing things for the purpose of politics rather than, really true sincerity. And it's it stinks.
Not true. And
it's true. I think you just
that's your
basically
opinion.
said it.
I'm sorry. We're not going to agree, and I have to go. But I do appreciate the opportunity to lay out my case. Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Of course. Thanks, Michael.
Okay, so that's not how I thought that interview was going to go, frankly. I am not anti-Steve Hilton, or at least I wasn't before just now. I was, for months, promoting the idea of voting for both of them. I've been sticking up for Steve Hilton. Now, Sheriff Chad Bianco's Second Amendment support is undeniable. So when you're on a gun show, when you're on Gun Owners Radio, of course you're going to talk more about that. And in the past, we've had him on the show, but I've never spoken ill of Steve Hilton. he seems like a fine person. And he seemed to line up, when I did talk to him a few months ago, it was more than a few months ago, about the Second Amendment, he seemed philosophically with us, with the Second Amendment. And I was happy about that. In fact, I even said, hey, why don't you come down to San Diego and let's do some kind of event and introduce you to the gun community. But I got to tell you, what's happened the last couple of weeks and what I just saw in this interview, I'm done with Steve Hilton. There's no reason to support Steve Hilton. Not only, by the way, is he fairly unqualified to be the governor of California. I mean, this is a guy who's had a show with a bunch of opinions. He's never, run a big company. He's never been an executive. He's running for the executive branch of California. He's never done that before. He's making big promises about how he's going to do this, that, and the other thing. Most of his promises are as if he is the legislative branch, which worries me that he doesn't fully understand exactly what the executive branch does. But what worries me even more is his willingness to tear down a guy like Sheriff Chad Bianco when it becomes politically beneficial to him. And I don't think that's right. Now, say what you want about what he did when he was confronted with this BLM mob, but it didn't turn into a protest. Maybe you like what he did. Maybe you dislike what he did. Maybe you saw what he was trying to do and how he was trying to maneuver. Maybe that doesn't matter to you at all. But the reality is Steve Hilton didn't care about that until he found out that other people cared about that. And now for his own ambition, Steve Hilton is trying to become the governor. He's trying to be the main guy. So then rather than say, hey, I'm the right person for the job, or here's what differentiates me from Eric Swalwell, he's tearing down a guy like Chad Bianco, a guy who does have executive experience, a guy who has been elected in the past, a guy who lines up with the Second Amendment and a lot of other issues far better than maybe even Steve Hilton does. And that's the last thing we need. I'm done with this. I'm done with him. By the way, he's going to lose. Even if he makes it through the primary, he's going to lose. He's going to disappear, and that'll be that. Maybe he'll sell some books. Maybe he'll get some folks on his podcast. I don't know what his motivation is, but it doesn't appear to be pure. It doesn't appear to be, hey, I'm going to make this state better. It appears to be all about Steve Hilton, and I'm completely against it. I'm done with it. I really, truly expected this conversation to be fruitful, and we'd have a back and forth, but I think you saw just like I did. He was dodging questions and, not owning up to implications that he's, or at least his campaign has made. And I think it's all BS. So I'm done with Steve Hilton. I still stand by that the one way to get a Republican or a pro-Second Amendment governor in California is to get Steve Hilton and Chad Bianco to the primary. That those are the two in the runoff, and I think that there is a chance that would happen, although slim. But I'm done with Steve Hilton. I mean, if he doesn't want to do that plan, if he'd rather it be all about him, and he says, "Hey, you got to make a choice," great, made my choice. Sheriff Chad Bianco for California governor. So there you go. So the lifeblood of every organization is membership. We absolutely need membership. And you as a Second Amendment activist want to be involved. You want to help make things better. And we have a way for you to be involved, get involved, and stay involved. Look at our volunteer page. If you go to sdcgo.org/volunteer, we keep it up to date, and there's always an opportunity for you to get more involved. Our bread and butter are our shooting socials, where we teach people how to shoot. They've never had a shooting experience. Maybe they're brand new to shooting and they want to have a first-time shooting experience. You can help us do that. Or if you want to help spread the word, we have tabletops at different gun shops, at different events, and you can volunteer to tell people more about the Second Amendment, more about how to get a CCW, or more about being a member of an organization like SDCGO. The good news is it's super easy. We'll help train you. We'll help you get involved. We'll give you the opportunity to do good things.
If you don't have the time to volunteer, there's another way that you can help too. We are always looking for folks to donate. And if you want to pledge $5,000 in this next year, we will have you on our show as a guest host. So come join us in the studio. We would love to have you here for one episode, and that is for a price of $5,000.
$5,000 donation to San Diego County Gun Owners gets you a guest host with me and Dakota and Alicia, and you get to talk about whatever you want to talk about, and you get to do whatever you want to right here on Gun Owners Radio. So thank you so much. Whatever you do, just do a little bit more than you did last year and help us defend and preserve the Second Amendment right here in your backyard. Okay, our guest is one of my favorite guys, Rob McNellis. He is a city council member out in Santee. He is Mr. Santee, and he is so dedicated to public service, particularly the city of Santee. He is a founding board member of San Diego County Gun Owners and was an intricate part of San Diego County getting CCWs long before Bruen. You could get a CCW here in San Diego County. And I'm so thankful for everything he does and his commitment. And I just think he's a wonderful guy. And he's running for re-election. So I wanted to make sure everybody knew. Rob McNellis, how are you, my friend?
I am great, buddy. I mean, I'm no Michael Schwartz, but doing all right.
Who is, you know?
Exactly.
That's a high bar. So... So you're running for re-election. You decide you're taking the pain for a few more years. How's it been being a city council member in Santee?
You know, it's a blessing and a curse. I guess that's everything in, you know, when you're donating time, energy, resources, it's always a little bit of both. It's a little pain, a little pleasure. It's, you know, the good, the bad, the ugly. Today we're, you know, it's an awesome day for us here in Santee today. We're going to be dedicating or doing the groundbreaking for our new community center. It's been something that was talked about even before I got elected in 2010. And we're finally bringing it to fruition. We're finally breaking ground. And that became kind of my pet project for the last 3 or 4 years now. And it's finally coming to fruition. So, you know.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah, no, those are good things. But then there's also, you know, things are still tough all over. We've got 2 fire stations we need to build because we're not getting the coverage that we need to in Santee, the time frame coverage that we need to in Santee. With, you know, newer development and just more people on the roads. It's harder for our firefighters to get to different areas of Santee. So we got to find a way to fund 2 more fire stations out of nowhere. It's, you know, and they're not cheap, by the way.
So what is, I would imagine not. Any kind of real estate is expensive, but a fire station sounds like it's probably more expensive than the average. It's specialized and whatnot. Okay, so I just realized you've been in office this is going to be your 16th year. 16 years you've been in office.
Yes, sir.
What's an issue? What's like the most, I'm going to say annoying. What's the most annoying issue? You know what I mean? Like the issue that keeps coming up. You're like, oh God, you know, what's something that you've dreaded, you hate dealing with, or something that just can't seem to go right? Does that make any sense?
Yeah. There's a few things, but I mean, probably the number one concern for citizens is homelessness.
Yeah,
that's a really big deal.
How does that affect Santee?
You know, it's not as bad as it is in most places in the county. Our numbers have dropped dramatically over the last couple of years. But you know, part of that was, you know, numbers that we're looking back during the COVID times when the county had a no touch, no talk policy of you can't approach these people, you can't talk to them, you can't move them away from any encampments they're in for the fear that they may, if they're sick, they may get others sick, or if they're not sick and you move them to a place where others are, they may get sick. And so they didn't, you know, shelters were full or they weren't taking new people in. And it got really, really bad because there was nothing that, you know, deputies could do to move them along their way. I mean, we had people that were, you know, doing drugs and left drug paraphernalia right on the front porches of our businesses, and our businesses weren't used to ever having to deal with that. They're like, we're in Santee. This isn't supposed to happen here. And now things have somewhat come back to a normalized society, and we can deal with those situations a lot better. And so now our numbers have dropped dramatically, but it's still, there's still homelessness in our community. I mean, mostly in the riverbeds.
In the rivers, yeah.
Yeah, that causes another issue, which is more fires, because they're down there cooking drugs. They're not doing it to stay warm. It's not that. They're down there cooking drugs, and then they light everything on fire. And who has to go out there? Our firefighters. So our firefighters spend most of their time not fighting fires on homes or vehicle fires. They spend the vast majority of their firefighting experience in the river bottoms, putting out fires that are set by drug users.
You know what sucks about that, Rob, is I lived in Santee for years, but I lived in Santee for years. You don't see homelessness like when you're going to stores and shopping and going on a walk. I used to go down to Mast Park or whatever. You don't see homeless folks that much. Occasionally they'll pop up. It's just it's one of the, and that's kind of why it's like this weird gnat that it's there and it kind of pops up and it kind of buzzes in your ear, and every once in a while there's a fire that shouldn't be, like you said. And it's like not, it's almost like it's such a small problem. It's a big issue, but it's a small problem, and that almost makes it harder to solve. There's like a handful, and they're just doing something at these random times, and it's almost hard. So if you had 50 of them that were just like taking over parking lots or whatever, it almost seems like it'd be easier to solve that. But there's, I don't know, I'm making these numbers up. There's like a half dozen of them that are just doing drugs in the riverbed, and they inconsistently pop up,
So it got so bad that I'm not even exaggerating here. We're putting out 3 to 4 fires a week in the river bottoms.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was that. When were you, like, this recently, the last couple of years?
Summer. Yeah, last summer. So, and it's during summer. So, and to exacerbate it, you have, they're not ignorant individuals. They know their rules. They know where they're at. They know that they can hide in the brush and we can't do anything about the brush because the state of California won't let us cut the brush and debris out of there because it's an endangered habitat or what. It's not. It's dead bushes, dead debris. It backs up the river, the San Diego River, which then puts stagnant water out there. We end up with mosquitoes and all this other stuff.
All kinds of fun.
Yeah.
You're trying to like bring in new business and build community centers and keep taxes. You're trying to do all this stuff, and that just is like this annoying little issue, I'd imagine. Now, I didn't realize, so 2010 is where you got elected, which means I remember you started running at least 2008, 2009, if I recall. You were heavily involved in the community, but
yes,
getting elected was your first kind of, you jumped in with both feet into the political world, which is right around the time I started getting involved in Second Amendment activism. And then a few years later, we started San Diego County Gun Owners together. But I didn't realize we both kind of jumped into the political world at around the same time. And I'm curious, what have you learned about people being a politician, being an elected official, neck deep in the political world? What have you learned about people in the last 16 years?
I've learned that the average Joe has no idea what's going on in politics or in life unless it affects them specifically. So the average Joe gets up, has his coffee, gets in the car, opens the garage door, pulls out, goes to work, comes back, opens the garage door, pulls in, shuts the garage door, goes inside, has dinner, a little conversation with the wife and kids, goes to bed, and rinse and repeat. That's their life, because they, if things are relatively good, there's no reason to get activated or upset. People do things because they're upset about the way something is going, and that's typically what happens at a city council meeting. People typically don't show up to say, hey, everything is great. They show up to say, I'm upset about this.
Right.
whatever this is. Otherwise, they're just living their life like they should. And to me, I was always involved. I was involved in the Chamber of Commerce. I was involved with the school districts as a business of the year for the school district. I was, I was involved in my industry. I was, president of the Association of Mortgage Brokers, president of Association of Realtors. I was always very involved, which kept me in kind of the know of what laws were coming out and how they would affect me and my family and our industries. And so my eyes were maybe a little bit more open than most, but that's not the average Joe. And that was something that was weird for me to see is, oh my gosh, the only time anybody shows up is when they're upset.
When they're upset about something that affects them directly. So how do you feel about that? Is that good? Is that bad? Do you wish they were more involved? Do you think it's good that they don't have to be involved? Or what kind of impact do you think? Or how do you know what I mean? Like, what is that good, bad?
No, that's a great question. And the actual reality is that it's probably good. I mean, if we had a chamber full of people every single council meeting, based on the information I just provided, that they pretty much only show up when they're upset, that would tell you, wow, we're upsetting a lot of people. But I mean, we get one or two people that show up. Unfortunately, it's very few people that show up to our city council meetings. But the reality is, it's because things are going okay. Like there's not a lot for them to get upset. The funny thing is, the majority of the people that show up upset aren't even residents of Santee. They're residents of surrounding communities, and they just want to talk about what's going on in their community and how can we help them, or they want us to open up a road so that they can get into Santee easier. Like,
it's funny you say that, Rob. So COVID has totally changed the county board of supervisors and their meetings. I used to go pre-COVID. I went to a number of those meetings because there were, something on the agenda that had to do with guns or whatever. Hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. They'd kind of bang through the agenda, and it wasn't a big deal. Post-COVID, there's about a half a dozen people who weigh in on every agenda item. The meetings all take 3 hours minimum. There are interruptions. There's all kinds of, circus activities. The new county board folks have no idea how to run a meeting. There's almost no discipline. It's absolutely ridiculous. I'm not talking about Jim and Joel. Those guys know what they're doing. I'm talking about the other noobs that have no idea what they're doing. But it's all COVID. And I mean, like, seriously, there's 6 people in the crowd at every single meeting, same 6 people, and they weigh in on every single issue, whether it applies to them or not, whatever. They weigh in on every single issue, and it is such a circus. It's so ridiculous.
It is. I mean, a lot of people just love to hear themselves speak. There are individuals that will show up and pull things from our consent calendar just to hear themselves speak, and then they record it, and then they sit back there in the back and watch themselves on their phone that they so they can see themselves on TV. It's
everybody's the star of their own movie, right? The star of their own show.
God bless you. I mean, at least there's it's someone paying attention. I guess they think, I'm certain that they think they're doing it for the right reasons, and that they're they're the activists for the people, and nothing's going to get by on their watch. But the reality is, it's benign information, and 9 out of 10 times these individuals or person will just at the end go, "But you still do it better than San Diego or the county."
Yeah.
Now, why bring it up?
Yeah, really. Okay, so you're running for re-election. I think it's extremely important to get you re-elected again. I think that we should work really, really hard, and there are a number of reasons for that. First off, nothing's guaranteed. People think of Santee, people think of East County, and it's like, oh, well, that's a stronghold, conservative or Republican strong or whatever. Rob should have no problem. But the makeup of the community has changed a little bit. Your colleague Dustin won by like 4 votes a few elections ago. So nothing's guaranteed. But you are a perfect example of why Second Amendment folks should pay attention to local races. A lot of people kind of ask me like, well, nothing happens Second Amendment on the local. Why don't we just pay attention to state or federal or whatever? No. You got elected. We started San Diego County Gun Owners, and you were directly had a direct impact on the ability to get carry permits issued in San Diego, in that 2 ways. Number one, Santee passed a resolution saying, "Hey, sheriff, we want you to issue permits. We send you. I think you guys were sending them like $16 or $17 million to be their law enforcement at the time. You contract with them to be your law enforcement, and hey, we want you to issue permits." But the other thing you did as an elected official is you wrote an op-ed that made it into the Union Tribune saying, "I don't agree with what the sheriff's doing on permits. He needs to change his policy and start issuing." And both those things had a heavy impact on people's ability to get CCWs long before the Bruen Supreme Court case happened. So, I mean, you had a direct impact on people's ability to bear arms.
There were several back and forths between me and Gore back in the day in the Union Tribune, and it was kind of funny. It was a little soap opera going on in the newspaper back and forth, and that it did make me laugh. And then, later when I was at an event for I can't remember if it was Isa or Brian Jones, somebody that got elected, and we were kind of in their suite after election night, and they'd won. And Gore walked in. I introduced myself, and he still was not happy with me. He was still not. You're the one. Oh yeah, that was me. Yeah,
but he changed his behavior. You got him to big part of helping him change his behavior. And I don't care why elected officials behave. I just care that they do behave. And the political pressure you helped put on the sheriff had a true, real, meaningful impact on the issue and in people's lives. And I don't think that can be overstated. I think that was a huge, huge thing. So when people wonder, like, well, gee, why should we pay attention to school boards, city councils, mayors, county board, etc.? This is a really good, it's not an isolated incident. You're a really good example of just how impactful local politicians, local elected officials can be. I keep calling you a politician. I feel like you're gonna slap me across the face.
That is definitely not me. I am first thing from I shouldn't say that. I guess I mean theoretically I am a politician. I'm not a good politician.
Yeah.
I call balls and strikes. Like there's and you're going to get the same information from me whether we're face to face or I'm sitting up on the dais or any place else. It's real easy when you don't have to worry about keeping your story straight because you tell the same story every single time because that's what you believe.
Yeah, I agree.
That's
been my experience with you.
Yeah, well, like I said, I'm not smart enough to remember a bunch of different lies I told, so I've got to just be the same all the way around, and you either like it or you hate it, and there's a lot of both.
So why is it important to you personally to stand up for the Second Amendment?
Because these are our rights. These are our inalienable rights. Like this is what our country was founded on. And listening to all the rhetoric of, from the left, mostly from the left, not to say that it's all, but it is mostly from the left, especially, God forbid, every time there's a school shooting and all of a sudden it's, oh, we got to ban all guns. It's not realistic. It's not it's not plausible, and it's not the answer. It's just not the answer. I mean, we've all heard the story of, I guess, cars kill people, so we got to get rid of cars. It's a joke. But it is analytical to exactly what we're talking about with guns. It's not the gun. It's the person. We've made the argument 1,000 times. It's not the gun. It's the person. Deal with the person. Deal with their mental instabilities, and that will solve a lot of stuff. But there's a lot of craziness going on in the world right now, and I will tell you, I'm locked and loaded. Like I want to be able to defend myself. You can't depend that law enforcement is going to be able to get to you and or your family in a time of need in a timely manner, especially as things continue to spread out, populations continue to spread out, more items pop up, in society that they have to be dealing with. They may drop everything they're doing to try and get to you, but it only takes a few seconds for someone to want to do damage to you and bodily harm or worse to you or your family members. You've got to be able to defend yourself. There's, that's
well. I remember during the COVID thing, there was, they had demonstrations in Santee, but they were kept under control. But they were damn near riots. Some knucklehead, you had to wear a mask to go into anything, a store, grocery store, whatever, and some knucklehead wore a KKK mask into the grocery store to make a point.
Not a Santee citizen, by the way.
Not a Santee guy. He came in from out of town to do that. Honestly,
Yes.
if it weren't so offensive, it'd kind of be funny, and people are gonna jump all over me for that. Whatever, but it wasn't funny at the time, and it certainly wasn't funny to the people it offended, and it definitely wasn't funny to the nice, fantastic, peaceful people of Santee, the residents of Santee, which I was at the time, when they were preparing for true riots. La Mesa had just burned down a few nights prior. So, I mean, this is not theoretical. This is real world, And I had a neighbor, Rob, I don't know if I ever told you this story. I had a neighbor come over. I guess he called me first, and he said, "Hey, I just picked up a shotgun. I need you to teach me how to use it before the riots tonight." Like, that's okay. And I did the best I could, and we actually ended up we got him some training, if I remember correctly. But it was a weird time, man. It was scary, and so your right to keep your arms is real.
And but you also had a media that was if it bleeds, it leads. Anything that they can sensationalize is going to be. I recall like Snoop Dogg of all people, all the way in Diamond Bar, which I think is funny. It's where I went to high school, and that's where he lives now. But he's thugging from Diamond Bar. He's posting on socials that about Santee because he sees.
Yeah, I remember that
type of stuff, this sensationalized stuff. That once again, these aren't even Santee citizens. It's not even somebody that lives here or has their family here. It's somebody that came into here in order to incite violence and to incite disdain. And it's fair, not fair. It is what it is. But I can proudly say that nothing ended up happening in the city of Santee. Unfortunately, a lot of businesses felt they needed to board up their businesses in case, but nothing went down. And there were a lot of citizens out there that were not here in Santee, baby. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, and I remember the sheriff rolled in about 100 cars full of deputies, and it was everything. Leadership, residents, law enforcement all worked together in Santee and did a really, really good job.
Well, the ACLU tried to sue us.
Of course.
Because
what else would they do?
Because we put a curfew out for this very reason, because it was getting so hot. Then the ACLU tried to sue us for having a curfew. We're trying to keep people calm and keep the city from burning, and this.
Did they sue? Did they win or lose, or did they?
No, they retracted. We have a really good city attorney. He is quite fantastic, and all the stuff that he's come up with to innovative things that he's done to keep Santee at the forefront of these battles. But yeah, he got them to drop it in the name of public safety.
Interesting. Okay, Rob, you're running. You're not until November, right? There's no primary in Santee.
No primaries in Santee. We've got until November, but
winner take all. Do you have an opponent yet, or is it just
not as of yet? God willing, I won't. But you never know. There was a time where the other side of the aisle waited literally till 30 minutes before the drop dead minute deadline, and then all of a sudden brought forward their candidate, and website was up. They were door knocking and literally bussed in people just to run against little old me.
Which was the cutoffs in like August?
August, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what can people do right now to help? Is there anything people can do right now to help you, or should we just stay tuned, or what do you think? What are your suggestions?
Stay tuned. We'll get right now. I'm working very diligently to help somebody else and their campaign get kicked off.
Talk about that. Go for it.
That's Eddie Vanderveer. He's running for District 2. Really, really pushing hard for him. So I told him he's got till March. He's got me till March. After March, I got to start my campaign going. But really diligently working for Eddie V for Santee.
And what's his background? He's got an impressive Santee background.
He is. He's been president of the Chamber of Commerce. He's the general manager for Sportsplex USA, which is our large adult playground that we have here in Santee for soccer and softball and baseball. He's been running that since 2010 when the park opened. He's born and raised here in Santee, raised his family here, goes to the Catholic Church here. Like he's a diehard Second Amendment guy. He's a true conservative, but he's just like you mentioned, Councilmember Trotter. He was another big push for me back in the day to get him elected because he's an independent thinker, not because I'm looking for any yes men of any by any means. I love people that have a strong spine. They have a true north, and both of these guys absolutely do. And that's, if I don't make it next year in this election or the time after that, I will feel at least comfortable knowing that our city's in good hands, having these two people up there that will always put the city first. And they aren't doing this just because they're looking for the next office. Neither of them are looking for any higher office. They just want to do what's best for the city of Santee.
That's awesome. Awesome, Rob. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for everything that you do. Really, truly appreciate and respect you. And I look forward.
Hey, I gotta say real quick before we get off here. I'm sorry, I know we're a little bit long, but no one has taken the reins defending the Second Amendment as an individual more than you that I've ever met my entire life. Organization, huge NRA, all these. I don't see them nearly as effective as what you've been able to do. Just you, brother.
It's not. I appreciate it. Those are kind words.
It's quite amazing, and you are also. I don't know if your listeners know, but you are also truly one of the funniest guys I've ever met in my entire life. Sitting with you when you do my podcast, you can be a little bit more off the cuff, and you are witty, you are intelligent, and you know what you're talking about. And that's why everybody loves you, brother. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate that. Don't start any ugly rumors. No one's going to believe you about any of that. But I appreciate it, Rob. Thanks, man. I really do. I enjoy you very much. I think you're just a really great guy, and we do have a lot of fun when we get together. And
absolutely.
And I think I do. I think I'm like these podcasts and whatever. I think I do have to put my adult voice on and get real serious. But I occasionally like to say something remotely funny and laugh. But maybe
you are very witty, my friend.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate it. And let's get together soon. And I look forward to celebrating with you in November on yet another victory.
God willing, brother. Thank you very much.
All right, man.
I've got some classes you are not going to want to miss out on. We are bringing Chuck Haggard from Agile Training and Consulting out to San Diego in March. He's going to be here the evening of March 13th teaching a low-light class. This is going to be perfect for those of you who have a home defense firearm and want to learn a little bit more about how to use light in your home, how to use a handheld flashlight, and whether or not a weapon-mounted light is the right choice for you. On Saturday, March 14th, he's going to be teaching an all-day at the range concealed carry skills class. He'll be covering pepper spray, flashlights, tourniquet use, and then of course lots of shooting and practice dealing with unknown aggressors or just random people walking up to you. There will be a lot of opportunities for you guys to practice your verbal judo and de-escalation skills as well. On Sunday, March 15th, he's going to be teaching an all-day retention and disarms class. There will also be shooting in that class. You'll be able to shoot from different positions of retention, and he will teach you a little bit about how to avoid being disarmed yourself or how to assist with disarming somebody else. So I hope to see you guys there.
So everybody knows we went to SHOT Show. Most of them went to SHOT Show. Dakota didn't make it this year.
I was like,
all of us, everybody that's important and valuable, and went to SHOT Show, and some people didn't. No, I'm not a big gadget guy. I'm actually not. This is gonna sound bizarre. I'm not a big gun guy, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I'm not into like the latest this and that and the other thing. My collection is so lame. I really don't have a lot of firearms.
Yeah, you don't have a lot of firearms.
I don't have a lot of firearms. I have a couple of carry guns. Yeah, I have a couple of carry guns. I have, a couple. I have a couple of shotguns and a rifle. That's what I have. But beware of the man who only has one gun.
Yeah, that is a
he
true
knows how to
statement.
use it, so. Anyway, I did find one really cool thing
At SHOT Show?
at SHOT Show,
All right.
a
Okay.
product, and it was, you haven't seen it. You know, you
I
and
didn't
were-
know. Yeah, you and I didn't.
It wasn't at the. You and I
No.
were nowhere near each other.
We were
when
doing
got
our
it.
own thing.
I procured a cool thing. It's not an actual firearm, so YouTube don't ban us or whatever. So the reason I like this is it's a cool training tool. And you guys are both trainers, and you work with a lot of folks. And I think that this is actually kind of a cool, useful thing that people can use. One of them, would you agree that one of the most important things to work on when you're learning how to shoot a firearm is trigger press?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact, it might be the most important thing. I mean,
I'd say grip is more important
grip's
than
more important.
trigger press, but I mean,
It's
they're
it's
up there.
it's right up there, and it's definitely. I think it's the easiest thing for people to screw up.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I personally would put trigger a step above grip,
Yeah. All right.
but right up there, both.
Yeah.
You guys should arm wrestle.
Yeah, well, I'm horrible at arm wrestling, as I found out not that long ago. I'm very competitive, and someone was like, "Let's arm wrestle." I was like, "Oh yeah, I got that." Did not have that. But what I was going to say is, if you have a really, really solid grip, you can mispress the trigger without affecting the sights very much. But if you have a shoddy grip and a bad trigger press, it's all going to be a mess.
Yeah, you're done.
Yeah. Or if you just have a bad grip, also going to be a mess. Like harder for follow-up shots and stuff. So I don't know. They're right up there though.
And I think it's easier to fix grip than it is trigger
Yes,
press.
for sure.
I think it's easier. Okay.
Yes.
So there isn't much to work. You can't really work on. There's nothing that helps you with trigger press. You kind of just have to do it. You have to just, it's repetition, it's whatever. It's not like, I haven't seen any tools when, that you can use when you're driving around in your car or whatever. There's not any exercises that you can, you know what I mean? Like trigger presses, you got to get into the range and you got to work on trigger press and you really got to concentrate on it.
Well, dry fire at home helps.
Yeah, I mean, dry fire, there's like the Titan X and the Mantis stuff. I also think like just learning how to
Assert.
isolate your trigger finger from like a hand grip. Like I have, can the camera see this? I have my students like work on their grip and then just look down and try to only move their index finger, because often you'll see people are like moving their whole hand. They're squeezing with their whole, all their fingers at once. So I do have people work on isolating that trigger finger movement and stuff, but
Right.
I get your point.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dakota. Now you have an even better option.
Okay.
Good
Tell
Lord.
me more.
So, by the way, not sponsored. I don't even know the name of this company. I didn't.
I think it might
didn't
be.
see
I
that
think it might be
company.
True Break.
Oh, there it
'cause
is.
that's like-
True Break. It's called True Break, the
Yeah.
fidget spinner for shooters. I'm not sponsored. They don't know I'm doing this. I just happened to trip across this thing. I didn't understand it, and then once I figured it out, I was like, "Holy crap, this is cool!" So I'm going to hand it to you, Dakota. Okay.
I'm a hard person to impress, unfortunately.
Right.
Let's see.
This is part of it. So you take it out of there, okay? Now this is a piece. These are pieces that make it either harder or easier to use.
Okay. So it makes the trigger press.
More difficult to get right.
Okay, interesting.
So it doesn't make the trigger press
harder.
harder. In other words, it doesn't turn it from like a 5-pound trigger to a 10-pound trigger.
Okay.
It makes it harder to get it right.
What
and
is
that's the whole
get it right?
Exactly. Okay, so there's one in there, okay?
Uh-huh.
Now, I want you to just see how if you press it, it'll either go off to the left or the right.
Uh-huh.
But the point is to keep that thing centered.
Uh-huh.
So you have to get a fairly perfect.
Here, let me play with
Well,
it.
check
up
out.
here.
We'll hold it up to the camera in a minute, but
Oh, okay.
But look at the mechanism there. If you look, you have,
I see it.
You have to press that trigger, otherwise it goes off to the left or right, and then it gets all screwy on you.
Uh-huh.
You see that?
I do see that.
So if you push it off to the left, push it off to the right, then it doesn't do. You have to do it fairly perfectly in order to get it right. And there, like I said, there are different inserts. There's like an easy, hard, and
Interesting.
medium. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense.
Okay, now hold it up to the camera and show what I'm talking
Okay. So looks to me, it's CERT? Oh, it's the CERT True Break. Okay. My guess
about. Yeah, go ahead.
My guess is that this is CERT trying to compete with the Titan X because it's a much cheaper version of the full CERT pistol.
Yeah, because
so
Mantis came out with the CERT Look at, yeah.
Yeah, so it's CERT branded on here, but it says CERT True Break. So I think this is them trying to compete with Mantis because Mantis is going to take all their business.
Well, Mantis is way more, involved. This is just like a simple.
No, Mantis came out. No, Mantis came out with a CERT knockoff.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Yes,
like $100 cheaper at least.
At least.
Yeah.
Yeah, I paid $400 for my CERT, and the
Mantis
Titan X is like $200, I think.
Yeah, it's $199. Yep.
So what do you think about that? This guy, this True Break thinger.
It's interesting. I think it's a good tool for folks to see, like when they, visually see what input they're putting on the trigger. I will say that I don't think whether you're pulling the trigger a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right during the trigger press, the trigger as a mechanism can only go straight back. So the problem isn't if you're putting a little more pressure on the left face of the trigger or the right face of the trigger. The problem is if you're also pulling the entire gun in that direction. You could have extra pressure on one side of the trigger than the other and still pull the trigger straight to the rear because the mechanism of the trigger only allows you to pull it straight to the rear. So I would say it's less important what this trigger bar thingy is showing me, and it's more important if the actual muzzle end of this pretend gun were to be moving left or right.
You don't think this will train? You're absolutely right. Totally hear you. But you don't think this trains that out of you? You're pulling them.
Let me just show. So,
show
okay.
'em.
So that's supposed to stay straight up and down. If I do it like this, it pulls it to the right. And if I do it like this, it pulls it to the left. But you see how the muzzle of the red gun isn't moving when I'm doing that? That's the only thing that matters. If the muzzle end of the gun isn't moving, I think the trigger press is fine. So I understand the concept that it's like, hey, you're pulling on the trigger to the right. It's a good visual tool for folks to be like, oh, I didn't realize I was doing that. But at the end of the day, a real trigger
It matters
can't.
where your muzzle is, not where you're.
Yeah, a real trigger can't move to the right.
By the way, isn't there? So if you do it wrong, isn't there like a reset? Don't you like slap the bottom to reset or something?
You hit
like
the
that?
little thing on the bottom.
So okay. All right.
Yeah, so as long as you get it to stay centered as you're pressing, like see how it's to the right, now it's to the left. If I can press it straight back and keep it in the middle and then click it, it'll reset itself. But if I pull it to the right and then click it, it'll stay stuck to that side so that I know I did it wrong and then I have to reset it with the bottom. Yeah. It's an interesting tool, but I wonder, Alicia, if you think the same thing. I can't actually physically move a trigger to the right or the left on a gun.
You can't move the trigger, but what I see often is it's not especially in CCW classes, firearms are smaller. We tend to get, especially with men who have bigger man hands, a little bit of overreach. I think this might be it could be beneficial in helping you to train, first of all, your proper finger placement on the trigger. Because when you overreach on that trigger, what you do is instead of a straight comeback, most people tend to hook it, and then they do pull the muzzle.
Pull it, yeah. The thing is that's not going to train you on trigger reach unless it's the exact same size as your gun.
Right.
Do you think that it will? Okay. Do you think that it would help stop people from mashing? I think the most common trigger issue is mashing that trigger. Do you think that this would help create a more smooth press?
It definitely could. I think even just the visual.
I'm mashing it and doing it wrong, and I'm actually keeping it decently center.
Right, I know. I was able to do it too. Like it was resetting with what I would consider a bad trigger press.
Right, that's what I was,
Like I consider a bad trigger press if you get to the wall and you shove the gun downward, that's a bad trigger press because you're anticipating, that recoil is going to happen. You're trying to fight the recoil before the gun starts its upward movement. And so you're going to drop your shots lower. And I was able to do that, but keep it correct on that trigger. So I don't know.
All right. So, all right.
I think it's still fun.
It's fun.
It's definitely fun. I think a scale of 1 to 10, when it comes to fun, 9.5 easy.
Yeah, it's super fun.
But what about useful, Dakota? Is it useful? Is it not useful? What are your thoughts?
It is useful, but I think there's a lot of things I'm concerned about when it comes to little training gadgets. The main thing is building in bad habits. I want my students to practice a trigger press where the sights are telling them whether or not they did it wrong. I want them to be so focused on that sight picture or that red dot alignment that when they press the trigger and they see their front sight dip down a little bit when they click, that's their visual cue. Hey, I did something wrong. I need to fix that. So I prefer just plain old dry fire with your regular gun. You're putting your trigger finger in the exact place it should go because it's your gun, your size, and you're learning to stare at your sights and focus, or stare at your target and focus on your sight picture being proper in between your eyes and your target.
So would you incorporate this into what you do, or nah, you're good?
Maybe as like a quick visual reference of like, hey, this is what you want to, you want to understand that you're pushing on the trigger. This is a good visual tool for that, but I wouldn't have somebody use it for dry fire purposes. I would just have it as a visual reminder that like, hey, you might be pulling on your trigger.
I used to have a buddy who played drums, and I remember he said one time, he said, all these drummers out here, they do stretches and they lift weights and they do all these things to help them be a better drummer. They do everything but play the drums. Yeah. And it kind of feels like that. So Alicia, what do you think? Do you thumbs up, thumbs down? You like it, don't like it? Good, but nah.
So spending, obviously I haven't spent a lot of time with it, but just in the few minutes that I've kind of had at my hand, I'm trying to think what could I learn from it, or what do I see that could be something that would teach? For me, the only benefit I'm seeing is proper placement on the trigger.
Yeah,
like
finger.
I'm seeing a difference with that. But like Dakota said, if this firearm is not sized like mine, but what it is, it can be a good visual that shows you the difference between when you have that finger, if you're more fingertip versus overreaching, it does have an influence. It kind of lets you see that. It may not be sized exactly like yours, but I can see some value in it for that. Yeah. Beyond that, it's fun.
Yeah. All right. Either of you guys want it?
I'll take it.
You want it? All right, cheers. Cheers. I was going to leave it in my vehicle and just
see if someone steals it.
Yeah, right. No, I was just going to leave it like on the center console and just kind of play with it while I was driving around. Okay. And then I started thinking like, if I'm driving around like pressing a trigger and then resetting it and whatever, probably not a good idea. Not a good place for it. So I don't need more toys in my life.
And what's interesting is that reset that you're talking about on the bottom, the reset's only needed if you go grossly off.
Yes.
If you keep it decently center, it resets itself.
So I think the idea there was to, if you screw up, then,
right. If you go badly off, you do have to reset it.
So, it would be fun to practice, like, how fast can you do a bunch correctly kind of thing. Like that's kind of what I use the Titan X for. But again, if I'm going to be doing, intentional trigger presses, I want the sighting system to be what's telling me whether or not I can take the next shot, not whether or not the trigger reset, because with this, since there is no sighting system, right? You can't look through that rear thing. It's not okay. Because I see that little thing. Is that supposed to be a front sight?
No. Well, I guess it could be in concept. However, when you view from the rear, you don't see it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So it doesn't have a sighting system on it. So to me, I'm just kind of like, eh.
All right. The True Break, the fidget spinner for shooters. Got it at SHOT Show.
It's $49.95 online at nextleveltraining.com.
It's $49.95?
$49.95.
That's why CERT is not,
I don't know.
Sorry,
man.
CERT, I like you, but they're not really going to be competitive with all the new Mantis products coming out.
I just don't know if it's worth $49.
I saw Mike in his booth. I just didn't stop and talk to him.
Yeah, he's a nice guy.
Mm-hmm.
I have
7 feet tall.
He is very tall, and he's a good instructor. He's taught out at a Girl and a Gun National Conference a few times.
Worked with them.
I think
he's a good guy.
I think if I were an instructor that was taking on a lot of people, a lot of classes, I think it is a good visual, but I'm just not sure me as an individual shooter that would be super helpful for me for $50. Anyway, all right. Well, there you go. We did a product review.
That's fun. We should do this more often. I love having opinions on things I've only seen for 30 seconds.
All right, well, there you go.
Let me tell you the story of a 23-year-old Ukrainian refugee named Erna. She fled the bombings in Ukraine, seeking peace and safety here in the United States. And instead, on October 22nd, 2025, she was fatally stabbed on a Charlotte light train rail during what should have been a routine commute. This was no targeted attack. It was sudden, it was horrifying, and it was violent. It's a painful reminder. Danger can strike at any time, anywhere, even in places we expect it to be safe. Erna came here with hope. She worked at a pizzeria, she studied English, and she dreamed of becoming a veterinary assistant. Her life was full of potential. And yet, it was cut short by someone with a long history of mental illness and multiple arrests, someone who slipped through the cracks of the justice system. Her story is not a tragedy, it's a warning, a call, a truth we cannot ignore. Preparedness and awareness are critical for our safety, no matter who we are or where we come from. You may never be the victim, but danger does not discriminate, and safety is not about living in fear, it's about being proactive, being prepared, and having the tools and confidence to protect yourself. That's why Not Me SD exists, because we believe that every woman deserves power to protect herself. Yes, our heart is in firearms training, but true self-defense is about choices. It's about finding what works for you. Whether that's Krav Maga, pepper spray, situational awareness, or another tool that gives you the strength and peace of mind. We are here to walk with you through the journey. If you're ready to take that first step, or if you want to bring a group of women together for training, we're here for you. Our mission is simple, but powerful, to empower women with the skills, tools, and courage they need so they will never be the next victim. Together, we are rewriting the story from fear to strength. This is more about training. It's about building confidence. It's about creating a community of women who refuse to be silent, refuse to be helpless, and refuse to be the next victim.
Curtain Call. Okay, her name's Alicia Curtin, so we call this segment the Curtain Call. And what it is we take a look at a defensive gun use, usually in the headlines somewhere, and Alicia analyzes it for us and fills us in, tells us what's going on, and maybe some good, maybe some bad, maybe some a learning opportunity. This one is, and it comes from us from uscarry.com. They're the ones that published it. Mother cleared after pulling gun outside York school as prosecutors say she acted in self-defense. So, Alicia, what do we got?
All right. So, as the headline gives, right, we have it occurred right there in the parking lot or the front pickup area of the school. This was towards the end of school time. This is at a pickup time. Mm-hmm. Actually, I apologize. It could have even been at a drop-off. I don't recall if it said pickup or drop-off, but it was at a time where kids were out, parents were there, vehicles were there. What happened is two parents got into a bit of a beef. This article here doesn't tell me, the one that directly from USA Carry doesn't detail what happened, but I was able to do a little bit of research, dig into a little bit more. Mm-hmm. And what occurred is one parent got very upset with another parent, two parents in vehicles. One got very angry at the other when one felt that the other parent got a little too close and could have potentially hit a kid or was very close to it. Was very upset that they were not careful enough in the parking lot with the kid present.
Wow.
So there were some words exchanged. And right now the law enforcement's very tight-lipped on this. They're not giving a whole lot of details as to what occurred yet, but we have parent A and we have parent B. We'll just kind of talk about it that way. Parent A, as the article gives, is the parent who was later arrested and charged, but they were not the one with the firearm. Parent B was the one with the firearm. Apparently parent A had some inappropriate behavior. Again, we don't know the details. We don't know if there were threats made, if there were things that clearly there was something that they said because they were charged for their behavior. Parent B pulled a firearm, did not point it, did not shoot, but displayed. And this occurred in Pennsylvania. Defensive display of a firearm is allowed in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is a stand your ground state. They, of course, have castle doctrine as well. There is no duty to retreat. And so parent B did pull this firearm and showed it and displayed it to help to try to change the behavior of parent A, which apparently it did work. Law enforcement was called. Our self-defender, the mom with the firearm, was not charged. Let's see. Parent A was arrested and charged and then later released pending court proceedings. And that's essentially the information that we have from the article. But as far as this goes, I mean, there's, we're here in San Diego, we're here in the state of California. Can we carry a firearm in the state of California onto school property or on adjacent streets or sidewalks here in California? No. Could this happen in California? Not legally the way that it occurred. But in this state, you can. And it's an example of a time where a firearm was used defensively. Again, we don't know all the details, but law enforcement has come out and said that they are not charging the mom with the firearm because they felt her actions were justified and her display of the firearm was fully justified. So there must have been something that parent A did that was egregious enough for law enforcement not to decide to pursue anything against the firearm owner.
So this is a case, sounds like, if I'm following this correctly,
Correct.
where just the presence of a firearm altered someone's, how did you put it? Changed someone's behavior?
Someone's behavior, yeah. Right?
Changed someone's behavior. So this is one of those hundreds of thousands of defensive gun uses where a trigger wasn't even pulled.
Right.
And no one was even hurt. It was, hey, this person's about to cause severe harm to me or worse. And therefore, I'm going to brandish a firearm. I'm going to pull a firearm out from concealment that I legally am carrying.
Right.
And that's going to change the other person's mind.
Right.
That's pretty much
that
summed it up?
sums it up. It does. It does. And I imagine there's likely going to be more information about this if we kind of follow it that will come out. Right now, they are not giving a whole lot. This just occurred February 3rd. So this is a fairly, just a few days ago. So I imagine there's going to be more information that comes out. And I'm curious if they release what occurred, what was said, what happened, because clearly something occurred. The pull of the firearm and the display was found to be justified.
Yeah, the video of the situation went viral on social media, so I think that's kind of why it's getting so much, media attention and stuff. But I think I saw it on Facebook. I don't know if it's on TikTok and stuff, but it went viral online. So I think that's part of it.
What do you think about the video was interesting to people? Was it because they were in a
Well, she got out. She got out of her
think?
car and was like hitting the other woman's window. It was like I would consider it like a physically aggressive encounter. And then the woman who was armed was sitting in her was I think still in her car and said, "I'm armed." Like told the woman, "I have a gun," basically. And then she, I believe, drew it from the vehicle, like not pointing it at her, but just like, I guess brandishing it, but almost like getting ready in case she had to use it without pointing it at the woman. And then the woman who ended up getting arrested and charged, her car was like blocking the roadway during this. So to me, it read as like a woman who's just super angry, almost hits a kid, stops in the road, gets out and is yelling at this other mom who was just concerned about that child's safety and the fact that this other woman was driving poorly. So I think
I wonder if she really was like, or was it just, you know what I mean? Did she overreact or did she react? You know what I mean?
Who?
The one who was concerned about the bad driving.
I don't think she overreacted. She was still in her car. She was not blocking traffic. She didn't get out and start hitting the other woman's window. You know, I think
I see. So
the bad driver almost hit the car and then got out and started hitting the window of this
situation.
Woman who happened to be legally concealed. Or I don't know if it's legal in Pennsylvania to carry a gun on school property. Actually, I didn't look into that.
The article stated that she didn't violate any. She was legally carrying. So
she had a concealed carry permit and all that for sure.
So it's one thing I was gonna. One place I was gonna go to is if you are a CCW holder in California, you're a CCW holder. Are you able to we're not lawyers, it's not legal advice, disclosure. Are you allowed to go into the roundabout in a school, the drop-off zone or the pickup zone?
You can have it stored, unloaded and stored in your vehicle, but you can't technically carry.
And
it must be stored before you enter the parking lot.
Interesting. Yeah. But obviously in Pennsylvania, they're good to go.
Apparently.
Yeah, and I think that decision from a while back, was it like September or whatever, August? That decision like specifically has a whole section just on schools and what is and isn't allowed. Like if you're driving on the road adjacent to the school to get past, then you're okay. You're not in that 1,000-foot radius situation. But if you're parking in that 1,000-foot radius to go to the school, that's different.
If you have a CCW, we don't have, the 1,000 feet doesn't apply to CCW. The 1,000 feet applies to non-CCW. And for schools, you have 626.9 is the penal code for schools and guns. 626.9 section C5 is about CCW. And is in your three areas that you can't carry with a permit: can't carry on the adjacent street, can't carry on the sidewalk adjacent to the school, and you can't carry on campus.
Right, but I think the decision in September was saying you can carry on the adjacent street if you're just passing through.
Right. Yeah, if you're passing through.
That's what I was meaning.
Passing through, you're exempt. Yep.
Interesting. All right. Any other lessons we need to learn from this?
For me, the big takeaway is she had it. and she apparently used it when it was appropriate. That's what the law is saying, is that it was appropriate, and she didn't hesitate to pull it. I mean, I would tell you in the article, she does state that she feels bad that she had to pull it. She doesn't like that she had to do it. And that's an honest, fair feeling I think any of us would have. But she did what she felt she needed to do, and the law agreed with her.
Yeah, and if by the way, if you're wondering, which I was, if this lady was driving erratically, I think that it probably counts against her that she jumped out and started beating on this other woman's window.
Yeah, and I saw this clip before I knew that this was on the show notes,
I haven't
and
been able
I
to
couldn't find it again.
I can't find it. I looked. I couldn't find it.
Yeah, so I don't know, like it just happened across my feed a few days ago. Like it was just like, oh, crazy, somebody pulls a gun at school. And then I couldn't see the gun in the video, and I didn't see the initial traffic altercation. All I saw in the clip was one woman getting out of a car and banging on the window of another woman's car. So that's all I've actually seen with my two eyes. I don't know for sure what the pre-altercation looked like, or if the woman actually did get close to hitting a kid. But that's like what the caption said, like, oh, somebody almost hit a kid, and then somebody starts banging on her window over it.
I'll tell you, I hate to sound like the old guy, and I'm officially this week I am the old guy. I think I just turned 50. Thank you for the happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Mike.
I think that at 50, you're the youngest old guy. You know what I mean? Like that's where you
Did your personality change?
Tremendously, enormously. But what I was going to say, I hate to sound like the old guy here, but it's just amazing how much things have changed. Back in the 80s, you know what I mean? You weren't like getting out of your car and, you almost hit my kid or whatever. In the 80s, you were far more likely to hit someone else's kid because they were mouthing off or doing something stupid or lighting off firecrackers or whatever. It is such a different world. I see so many videos of aggressive parents, going after umpires and referees and that sort of thing. Unbelievable. I don't know what happened. It's just absolutely ridiculous that this is going on. The message when I was a kid was, hey, if the ump or the ref had a bad call, then you weren't doing it good enough so that it was so crystal clear to the ump or the ref that it was impossible for them to make a bad call. That's what it was. Now it's a, I can't believe you did this to my poor baby or whatever. Such a different world. It's so odd and disappointing.
It's right up there with the tantrums. Really quickly, I just did really quickly look at Pennsylvania law.
Sorry, we were talking about guns. Let's interrupt this program about children and how to raise them and talk a little bit about guns.
Pennsylvania is under the Gun Free School Zone Act of 1985. It is not legal to carry in a school zone. However, it appears much like California that if the firearm, first of all, is not allowed to be carried. However, and California has the same thing. If you read 626.9 here in California, the penal code, it has the same thing, that if it is a justified use, essentially the presence of the firearm is forgiven, even if you weren't supposed to, if it's a justified use. So that's what it appears to be.
Yeah,
from what I'm finding.
Even if a prohibited person somehow grabs a gun to defend their life, that turns
right.
legal.
It kind of changes the laws.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's
from what I'm gathering, that's what this is under here in Pennsylvania.
Okay, sorry. I'm going to correct myself, correcting the record.
Oh.
Alicia Collins was the woman who displayed the firearm and is also the woman who almost hit the child in the school zone.
Oh, yeah, that's what I thought. All right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So let me, I'll take all that back. So Alicia.
Not me.
Not her, not this Alicia. Alicia Collins almost hit a kid in the school zone. Another parent got mad. Allegedly. Another parent got mad, started banging on her window, and then Alicia displayed a firearm, saying that she was in fear of her life because the other woman was banging on her window. So that makes it a little bit more complex.
Even with the name and the search, I'm still not finding the video.
Interesting.
So if any listeners out there can find it, put it in the comments down below. We want to see it.
All right. So the lessons here are calm down. That's number one.
TFD.
Jeez. And then the other is, it sounds like she was justified. Sounds like she was actually fairly patient, and then finally, had to do her thing.
Right.
And it also sounds like.
But maybe she was driving bad first and almost hit a 4-year-old child in a school zone. I'm kind of girl, I'm glad you had a gun and protected yourself if you needed to do that. But maybe slow down a little bit.
I'm pretty convinced she was driving bad.
I think so.
So
I don't know if that makes me a little sexist, but
Here's
I'm
what
pretty convinced she was probably driving poorly.
Here's a line from the article, actually. It says, Parent B, which is the woman who had the firearm legally carried, although we now know about the school circumstance, says she expresses remorse over her involvement, acknowledging that although she acted in fear for her safety, some of her prior behavior was regrettable.
Oh.
So it does state that in the
Good
article.
for you. What's
So
her name? Alicia something or other? What's her name?
Collins.
Well, Alicia
Alicia
Collins.
Collins.
What a stand-up thing to say, and to kind of admit, like, hey, all right, well, good for you.
Yeah, she's getting roasted online pretty badly. I actually feel bad for her.
It is. I mean, if you really step back, and if the story is true that she went tearing through a school and almost hit a kid and then drew a gun on the mom that was mad about it,
That doesn't sound good.
she's probably not. She's not going to be invited to the next whatever
Neighborhood
PTA
potluck.
or potluck or that's not good.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, clean it up, Alicia. Come on, not this Alicia. All right, anything else?
That's all I got.
There you go. Shout out to Pennsylvania. Awesome job. And Alicia, let's take a breath. Count to 10. There you go.
Those of you who know me know that I love training. You've heard me talk about different classes I've taken and different opportunities I've had to train with some of the best. And I'm going to talk a little bit today about Massad Ayoob. Those of you who have never had the opportunity to train with Massad, he is a legend in this industry. He was a former police officer. He has a ton of experience with deadly force, and he has a phenomenal instructor program called Deadly Force Instructor. I went all the way to Detroit back in 2022 to take this class from him, and you guys are super lucky. He is going to be coming to San Diego, so you don't have to travel far to get into this class. One of the things that I really appreciated about this class is the opportunity to do a mock trial. We got to actually play different roles in this trial, figure out who gets acquitted or not acquitted, and just deal with all of those repercussions as if they were real. So we had lawyers in class who were, actually debating their client's case. We had different witnesses go on the stand. I got to play the daughter of one of the characters on the stand, so that was a lot of fun. But it was just a great opportunity for us to experience how a good attorney can really make or break somebody's case. And we've seen this time and time again in the Deadly Force Instructor class. Sometimes you have an attorney who gets you off, and sometimes you have an attorney who doesn't. So it's a good opportunity for you to recognize how important the law process is and making sure that you have a good attorney. It's also a great way to make sure that you're teaching your students the best, most well-practiced pieces of the law. So for example, in class, Massad Ayoob will go over a ton of different cases and do some case studies on how these cases turned out so that you can go back to your students with some real life knowledge of how these things played out in court. One of the biggest takeaways for me in this class was the amount of knowledge Massad Ayoob had. And this guy knows so much about so many things. I took probably 8 pages of notes in this class, and I was able to come back to San Diego and I really revamped my entire CCW curriculum based on what I had learned. So not only is it real life data from actual shootings, actual defense situations, but it's also just a wide breadth of knowledge from an instructor who has literally decades of experience in this topic. I really enjoyed the class, and I think you would too. Go ahead and join us in San Diego if you are an instructor wanting to make sure that your students are getting the best information about deadly force and use of force. And if you're a defense attorney and you want to get a little bit of experience in a classroom with a bunch of folks who have the potential to use a firearm for protecting their own life in the future. So it's a great opportunity for you to learn about deadly force, being a better instructor, and being a better attorney.
All right. Really excited about our next guest. He's been on the show before, and I'm a big fan of Alan Beck. He's an attorney. He just argued in front of the Supreme Court. This is the Wolford versus Lopez case, which has to do with the vampire rule. The vampire rule has to do with whether or not a business is able to say you can or can't go onto your property, or whether or not they have to post a sign, really is what it is, saying that someone who carries can or can't go on their property. If we talked about it a little bit, but if you haven't heard the discussion, if you haven't heard Alan and the Supreme Court justices and the opposing counsel go back and forth, it is fascinating. I highly recommend it. It's all over YouTube. It's very, very interesting. But I wanted to have Alan come on and talk about it directly. Alan, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, Mike.
Yeah, congratulations.
Well, thank you very much. Hope you'll be able to congratulate me in May or June when the opinion comes out, too.
Yeah, there hasn't been an opinion yet, but congratulations on all the hard work that you've done. Getting it in front of the Supreme Court is a victory in and of itself. Like you said, somewhere around May or June is when they typically have they publish their decisions, and I think we're all hopeful but confident that it'll go our way. What are your thoughts on that? Do you want to speculate?
Well, what I will say is that most of the legal commentators I've read believe that we should prevail in the Wolford case, 6-3. And there's some that are speculating that maybe even 7-2, with the possibility that Justice Kagan could join the majority opinion and, and probably convince the majority to issue a fairly narrow opinion. Now, I don't.
Why would they do that?
I'm going to be as surprised as the rest of you, but I mean, I'm just telling you what I've read, in a variety of legal publications. But the reason that now you're asking why they would have Justice Kagan joined?
Yeah. So here's the question. You have a justice like Thomas, who's extremely pro Second Amendment. He has his majority. I'm sure, a couple of the other guys, Gorsuch, some of the other folks are pro Second Amendment as well, and they've ruled that way. But you have a guy like Justice Thomas. They have the majority. He can get the decision he wants. What would be the advantage to getting someone on, and increasing that margin while watering down the decision a little bit, or broadening the decision, like you put it?
Yeah, well, I mean, I would say this. If we could get one of the liberal justices to join the majority opinion, that would certainly legitimize the opinion in the eyes of a lot of people. It's the reality is that a lot of people, they see what's I understand the Supreme Court justices are not political beings, but the reality is people look at who appointed them. And I think it would get a lot of bipartisan support just in the general public. They saw that one of the liberal justices had joined the opinion, and that would convince, I'm sure, a lot of people, just regular day Americans, that okay, regardless of my politics, if we're getting bipartisan support on an opinion, that must mean there's something was genuinely really messed up about this Hawaii law.
Interesting. Okay, so we've talked about, there's a lot of information out there on what Wolford is and what you're fighting against and how it will impact California and SB2. There's a lot of information on that. So I don't really want to rehash that too much. What I want to do is talk more about what was it like? What was the experience like? I mean, you took this case on years ago. You've seen it through. You have gotten it all the way to the Supreme Court. You actually argued in front of the 9 Supreme Court justices. What was that like? What was it finally like when you're standing there in front of, history and making this argument?
It was an amazing experience. I'll be honest, in the first couple minutes, I was a little overwhelmed. You see these people on TV, you see them in the news. You don't really ever think you're actually going to be arguing from them. And, I've argued quite a few federal appeals cases before. But, after I started talking, I started to realize, at the end of the day, this is similar to some of the appeals arguments I've had from the in-bank court, except this is just, just a higher level of importance. And, I started to get a little more comfortable. The longer that I argued for, the more comfortable I got up there, and I really, it was genuinely a amazing experience to be able to experience that as a lawyer. I mean, very few lawyers. Go ahead.
I was going to say very few. You're absolutely right. It was an amazing, and congratulations on your hard work. And I'm very happy for you. I got to tell you were such a hardworking, nose to the grindstone attorney who sincerely cares about his issues and his clients. I'm so happy for you. I think that's what an amazing jewel in your crown and in your career. So congratulations. What was the biggest curveball while you were up there and things were happening and justices were asking questions? What was the biggest curveball that came your way?
Well, there were a couple things, but one thing that I think is pretty clear is Justice Barrett has some reservations about the unconstitutionality of a default rule as it applies, this type of vampire rule. There's a couple names, but I think she'd be okay with it as it applied to a private residence rather than private property that's open to the public, like here, right? An issue here is, a mall, Costco, gas station, anything that the general public's allowed to go to. Now, there's another set of laws that where the same requirement will apply to a private residence. And, I think that, she telegraphed the fact that she'd be okay with this type of law that if it was applied to a private residence.
What do you think
That's
about
surprising.
that? Yeah, that is surprising that somebody would be able to use it. Now, let's talk about that for just a second. The way I explained it a couple weeks ago when we talked about it is there's basically 4 categories of property. There's publicly owned and publicly accessed. There's publicly owned but not publicly accessed. There's privately owned and privately accessed, and privately owned and publicly accessed. And this really had to do with privately owned, publicly accessed, which all 4 of those categories have different rules when it comes to what you can and can't do. Is that a fair way to break it down?
Yeah, because each one of those areas of laws have a different historical tradition in how firearms carry has been regulated on them. And in the Bruen opinion, which was the Supreme Court's opinion in 23, that said that firearms rights have to be determined by looking at history. The court made very clear that a restriction like the one here has, the government is required to demonstrate that there's a comparable historical tradition in regulating arms bearing in a comparable manner from the historical period. And each one of these 4 locations have different historical traditions. Therefore, the level of regulation is going to be different on each one of them.
Go ahead. Alan?
Mike, did I lose you?
No, I can hear you.
Well, that's about it. I mean,
okay. Oh, sorry.
Because the history is different, which each type of these property. So what the government can do on each type of these property is going to be different because it's dependent upon this history. It's different.
So if you have private property, if you have your home, you can pretty much decide who comes in, what happens inside, that sort of thing. That's your castle. But if you have a private piece of property like a gas station or a restaurant or a store where you're opening it up to the public, it's still privately owned, and you can pretty much make rules, as you want. But because you're opening it up to the public, you're losing some ability to regulate. And one of the case.
Well, that's not quite right. You do have a right to regulate, but there's presumption that you're allowing in. There's presumption that people can exercise their constitutional rights on that private property, right? And the government, or sorry, not the government, the business owner has a right to say, hey, you can't come in here with your gun, but they have to affirmatively say that. The presumption is you have a right to carry a firearm, speak, pray, etc., and otherwise exercise your constitutional rights until that property owner says, hey, you got to leave if you want to do that.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Perfect.
And also, I just as a small caveat, here in California, we have extended rights on private property open to the public due to our state constitution, which is in addition to the rights governing the federal constitution, which gives us certain rights. So some of what I'm saying isn't quite applicable as to California shopping malls and whatnot regarding our free speech rights. So, there they can't renege your free speech rights because of our California Constitution. Maybe your viewers want to look it up. There's a case called Pruneyard that was up at the U.S. Supreme Court. That's sort of the seminal case which describes that, which goes into that issue.
So, are you saying is California favors what, the property owner or the free speech?
The free speech.
Interesting.
So if you're that's why if you're at a say a supermarket parking lot and you see some guy protesting, that's sort of a unique phenomenon in California because our California Constitution has said they have a right to go onto this private property open to the public as long as they aren't disturbing the business. They can hand out leaflets and do stuff like that, and the store owner doesn't have a right to tell them to go. But that's a function of our California Constitution rather than the federal Constitution. Under the federal Constitution, if someone's passing out leaflets, you don't want them to be on, in the parking lot, you have every right to tell them to go. So in most states, if you don't want a person handing out leaflets in your parking lot, even though it's open to the public, you can tell them to go, but not in California.
So does that help gun owners in any way, or is it totally different, totally separate, not part of this case, and doesn't really apply at all?
It's not really applicable here. As you can imagine, the California courts have not been very amenable to expanding firearms rights. Yeah. So I feel like if this ever went up to the courts, I guarantee you the courts would find firearms carry much different than passing out leaflets.
So, all right, okay. So part of this goes all the way back to the '60s, the Civil Rights Act. Yeah, basically the Civil Rights Act, and I'm going to summarize and correct me if I'm wrong, but basically part of the Civil Rights Act was, hey, if you have a restaurant and it's open to the public, you can't say, I don't serve people if they're black. I don't serve people if they're Jewish.
Well, that's absolutely true.
But so what's the relationship between that and a gun owner?
That's a little bit different because that deals with statutory law that's been passed at the federal level to protect people, minorities, and the handicapped, other people that suffer discrimination. So those are protections that are in addition to the protections of the U.S. Constitution. Because federal law was passed later on, dealing with various issues regarding discrimination. But there's sort of similar reasoning, is that certain religious minorities, certain racial minorities are have been discriminated against. Therefore, we're going to firmly pass this federal law to make sure they have that they're not discriminated against. And that's actually a similar reasoning to why the Second Amendment was passed. Our founding fathers didn't want gun owners to be discriminated against just because they were, exercising their fundamental right. That remember, our founding fathers didn't just believe that the Second Amendment was this wasn't something new they were coming up with. Right? I mean, they were codifying a pre-existing right that existed for 1,000 years in England prior to that. They just wanted to make sure, due to the excesses of the British, that they'd see what happens when government wants to take away people's right to firearms and just their liberties in general. So they codified the Second Amendment for much the same rationale those laws in the '60s were drafted, to make sure that people aren't discriminated against for exercising their liberty.
Now, one of the things that surprised me tremendously, and I don't think I'm alone, I think a lot of people were surprised by this, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson talked about some law. So one of the things you have to do is you have to bring up a similar law. You know, if you're going to make a gun law, then you have to show that there was a similar law that was in existence or tradition or text. But in this section, they were looking at, hey, is there another law that was in existence around the time the Second Amendment was written that mirrors this or comes close to this? And she talked about how your opposition brought up laws that were clearly racist. I mean, that was the intention of the law, is to stop black folks in the South from you know, having certain freedoms and liberties. And she basically said, hey, we had this law, you know, that existed, and that's a lot like the vampire rule, you know, so shouldn't the vampire rule stand? I'm totally paraphrasing. That's in just the gist of what she said. And it was then discussed, well, wait a minute, that's a racist, unconstitutional law. So, and she basically said, yeah, it was eventually found unconstitutional. Well, no. If it's unconstitutional, it's always unconstitutional. First off, did I paraphrase that correctly? But second, what was your reaction once you figured out what the case she was trying to make there?
Well, I was, you essentially paraphrased it correctly. And I was thankful that she was the only Supreme Court justice that believed the black codes, the laws at issue, which were called the black codes, were relatively similar. I really don't think that we should be using laws that were expressly designed to discriminate against African Americans, especially right after they received their freedom in the South from, you know, as comparable history to a sort of law today. I mean, Justice Kavanaugh said it best in a case called Rahimi that was heard last 2 terms ago. Is, you know, this is the history that we need to move away from, to paraphrase him. You know, that's what Justice Kavanaugh said in his concurrence. We should be looking back to laws of one very specific place that we literally had the Civil War, you know, to end these practices, right? Okay. And, you know, this is a very unfortunate part of American history that, you know, that the war was fought and, you know, hundreds of thousands of people died for the express purpose of ending slavery. And what the black codes were, those are laws that were cited to, are a series of laws that were passed in the South that basically were designed on a fundamental level to make it so African Americans had to stay sharecroppers without rights. And, you know, and stay on the original plantation, just basically continue their servitude in another manner. You know, just so we have here, you know, this is, let's just say I just don't see how this could be relatively similar either, just from an analytical perspective as well. The law at issue in Hawaii is a law of general applicability to the general public. Here we're dealing, you know, the black codes dealt with a law that was designed to discriminate against a small portion of society. How are the two things comparable? And that was the argument that I made to Justice Jackson. And, you know, I mean, if, you know, I'll be interested to see what she says and what's hopefully her dissent regarding, you know, her desire to incorporate, you know, patently racist laws in the form of the black codes into American jurisprudence. It's, you know,
what a polite way to put it. But yeah, it's absolutely ludicrous. Okay, so I want to go back, and by the way, I think it's indefensible that she made this, what she said about, you know, and tried to hold up this black code law as an example of a gun law that means that SB, or not SB2, but the equivalent, this vampire rule should stand. It's indefensible. It's not like she didn't understand it. It's not like you guys were using other black code laws in order to, you know, justify anything, and therefore she was, you know, trying to turn your words. It's completely undefensible. I have no idea what she was thinking or why, but it was pretty ludicrous.
And I always want to be clear, Justice Jackson was on her own in that. During the oral argument, Justice Kagan and Justice Sotomayor, who are the 2 other Democrat-appointed justices, were, you know, they were pretty clear without, without trying to be too explicit about it. They just don't believe that they agree with me on with the notion that this is just these are laws. These are horrible laws that we just should not be. I mean, this is you got these laws. I mean, what's next? We're going to use the Japanese internment jurisprudence as justification for something we're doing in the modern day. I mean, it's same, same unfortunate history. I mean, I love this country, and but like any country, we've made some mistakes in the past. And what's important is to acknowledge those were mistakes and move on from them. We don't need to double down on it like some people would like us to.
I agree. So I want to go back to the idea of having a justice, going to getting an additional justice to sign on by broadening the scope of the decision. So I want to. So in other words, they have their majority. We're pretty sure we know a majority agree that this vampire rule is unconstitutional and they're going to rule against it. But there's a notion of, hey, if they broaden the scope of the decision, or narrow it, they narrow the scope of the decision, that they could possibly bring on another justice, and it'd be like a 7-2, which would, like you said, make it more, it would give it a little bit more weight for people that maybe disagreed with gun rights in general, the Second Amendment in general. But which is more important? Is it more important that we get a nice, broad, solid decision, or is it more important to get that additional justice on, or is the difference between the two negligible?
Well, I will say this. This is what the Supreme Court always does in every single one of these cases. I mean, the conservatives don't always agree with each other either. And so these opinions are constantly being written, and different drafts are made. They're sent around to all the other judges, to justices, to get a agreement, right? And so it's a consensus always needs to be made, and that's important to the Supreme Court as an institution, that they get as much consensus as possible, because they don't want to appear like a political animal.
Yeah.
And you're right. To what extent that matters to everyday Americans like me and you, I don't know. But outside of the fact that it certainly is important to the Supreme Court as institution, and the Supreme Court as institution is, one of the bedrocks of our society. So I can see why there would be if they believe that they could make the opinion cross, party aisles, right, and make it what's effectively bipartisan, while acknowledging that, of course, none of the justices are actually political appointees.
Right.
They that's important to the Supreme Court as an institution. I think, honestly, that's from the perspective of the justices in the majority, that's would be more important than getting it done, expanding gun rights in one case.
Interesting. What did you learn doing this case? I'm sure from day one to now, there's been a lot of research, a lot of, and I don't just mean like some kind of factual, historic thing. What did you learn about yourself, or what did you learn about other people, or what are a couple of things you learned making your way all the way up to the Supreme Court?
Well, I learned I have a lot of friends in the legal community, because
That's awesome.
Honestly, it took a lot of time and effort to get this together, and a lot of people volunteered their time to help me prepare in the form of moot courts. The great Second Amendment attorney Kostas Moros organized, who is a excellent attorney with the Second Amendment Foundation. Organized a series of moot courts, and we had attorneys from the great law firm Cooper Kirk, Clement Murphy, the Institute for Justice, Steve Holbrook, attorneys from all across the country, Dave Copel, Joe Green. I mean, it'll take a while to name all of them, but point is, lots of attorneys from lots of organizations came and helped. The NRA was very generous. I'm not being backed by any organization in this case. So,
Right.
I've taken no money from my clients, and to the extent I've done fundraising, if I win, of course, I'll be able to get some attorney's fees from the government at the end. But point is, even for the costs, I've had to do fundraising, and they're very expensive costs. So thankfully the people of Hawaii chipped in so that I wasn't paying for this out of my pocket. And what was when we need to get a little more help, the NRA was willing to chip in, and they were nice enough to. They just saw I was doing a fundraiser. They said, "Well, we'll help you cover the remainder of the costs," and they loaned us the office. So
That's
even
phenomenal.
even though I did this on my own, I didn't really do it on my own, because a lot of people chipped in time and effort to just help me with the legal theory, make sure everything was gave me a sounding board, so I didn't feel like I was going crazy when I was trying to write a brief to the U.S. Supreme Court. So I was very thankful for that.
What was the most frustrating thing that happened during this whole time?
Oh, geez. Honestly, I'll tell you what the most frustrating thing is. This is not going to sound, this is going to sound a little odd, but just to apply to the Supreme Court, let me remind you, I'm, the only real source of fundraising here is a give, send, go. Is how much it costs to go to the Supreme Court. Just the application alone was about $8,500. Plus, about 10,000 total, plus some the reply brief. And then this will surprise you. The opening brief to the U.S. Supreme Court, along with the joint appendix, costs a little over $17,000 alone.
Wow.
Right, just in printing paper.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And I think we, when it's all said and done, this is a little over $40,000 to apply and get a case adjudicated at the Supreme Court. And let me tell you, I had to do a lot of bake sales for that.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's just like like you said, the paper, and the application.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot more into it. I mean, you've got years, and I'm assuming hundreds of hours of work.
Oh, thousands of hours.
Thousands of hours of work.
I'm just talking about when I was on the hook to pay myself.
People ask me all the time, "Hey, what about a lawsuit for this or that or whatever?" And a lot of people have a lot of great ideas, and there's a lot more lawsuits that need to get filed. But I always tell people, I can do that lawsuit. We can get that done. I need 5 years and $500,000. And if it goes to the Supreme Court, 10 years and $1 million.
Yeah, I'll be real honest. I was pretty burned out after I did a case that went up to the Supreme Court right after, just literally weeks after the Bruen a case. And, I'd spent 10 years on that trying to make Hawaii go shall issue. And I was extremely, I was burned out after that because, and I didn't think I'd have another big lawsuit in me. But, after they passed this vampire rule along with some other sensitive places, man, I was feeling, I didn't feel like it was right. I made the state go shall issue, and along with all these other great lawsuits around the country, and now they were just going to ban carry in basically most of the state. And dozens of people started calling me. It's like, you're the only attorney that's familiar enough in Hawaii with Second Amendment law that will do this case. And people said, well, at least try and we'll take care of the costs, or at least do our best to. And I decided, what the hell, I've got one more left in me, but it's but let me tell you, I'm glad I did it, but man, I was really on the fence about obligating myself to another multi-year litigation. But got me up to the Supreme Court, and that was a phenomenal experience. And it's looking like we're gonna win. So
it looks like we're gonna win.
I think it was worth it.
And it looks like that will change things in California when it comes to SB2 and where you can and can't carry. What else do you want people to know about this case, the Second Amendment, your experience in front of the Supreme Court, lawsuits in general? What's some parting words that you want to make sure our listeners hear from you?
Well, if you're a member of CRPA, I'll be speaking at the next meeting in Vista on Thursday. My very good friend Charles Birch is a a member up in the Vista chapter, and we're going up there.
He's a listener. Thor, we know. Yeah, we know
Thor. Yes, sir. He's a. If you ever see him at the gym, you'll know why you shouldn't mess with him. He's quite the weightlifter. Gosh, I mean, I've still, I've got a couple of lawsuits I plan on doing this year. In end of March, I'll be arguing from the in-bank court for the third time in a case called Ukitaki v. Lopez. That'll be heard the same week as the Rode case, which is also being heard in bank, most likely by the same panel. And I wouldn't be surprised if on the same day. So that's something that if you like hearing court hearings, you should look out for. It's the last week of March, the week of March 23rd. We'll be hearing that. So I'm pretty excited about it. And, other than that, I mean, just it's important to stay active in the legislature. It takes years for these gun laws to get off the books, even if you happen to win. And it's important that they get killed before they get put into place, so you don't have to have these multi-year battles. Instead, you can just write your congressman, your senator, your state senator, I should say, your state legislature, and that's the best way is to be proactive in legislature so these matters don't go to court. Other than that, I appreciate you having me on as always, Mike. And
actually, before we wrap up, real quick here, maybe this is too far, but the hope is when the decision comes out, the hope is that in California, people will be able to carry at any restaurant, whether they serve booze or not. They'll be able to carry at any retail store. Do you want to read? Excuse me. I'm sorry. I'm getting over the SHOT Show ick. Do you want to talk about like how you see SB2 changing in California if this decision goes the way we think it is? Like, or do you not want to be that specific yet?
It'll solidify the fact that it'll permanently get rid of the vampire rule. And as a practical matter, that means you'll be able to carry in like retail stores, gas stations, places like that, whether or not unless they affirmatively put up a sign that says that you can't carry. And what's going to do, because we got to win the Supreme Court, there's going to be a lot of methodology it's going to make it easier for us to win on the restaurants that serve alcohol and a couple of those other sensitive places. But I want to be clear, it's not going to directly impact the core sensitive, the sensitive places, like places that serve alcohol, parks, those places. They're still going to need to be addressed in their own litigation, even though this ruling will make it easier to challenge those laws.
I see. So if let's say after the decision, the vampire rule is gone, and in California, a retail store of some kind puts up a big sign that says no guns, can't have no guns on the premises, no guns on this property, whatever. Will that sign carry the weight of law, or is that simply their request? And if you're caught, they can ask you to leave, and otherwise you're trespassing, or would that become illegal if you went against?
It would be trespassing. It would be trespassing, and if you carried, so there'd be penalties due to the fact to be simple trespassing.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Any other questions, comments, concerns?
I just want to thank you, Alan, for I know that you put a lot of your heart, and as you said, your time and your money, and you bring the people together. And I just want to thank you for being the one to do it, because we all want it, we need it, and we want to support it, but we don't have the ability to go and do the things that you're doing. So I just want to thank you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much.
Cool. All right, Alan. Thanks so much for joining us. Thanks so much for everything you do, and congratulations again. I'm looking forward to reading the decision in June.
Oh, thanks for having me on, and have a great weekend.
So when you're using it on your firearms, because it takes about 3 cleanings. So I like to say it's a clean shoot, clean shoot, clean shoot process. much like seasoning a cast iron skillet. So you're going to field strip your firearm, break it down, and then you're going to put our product on piece by piece by piece, covering the entire firearm. Then you're going to take the barrel, you're going to clean the barrel inside of that, and then you come back and you wipe it all off, and you're done. It's that easy. Remember, seal one and done.
Okay, Stump My Nephew Sam, extremely good with gun trivia. If you have a gun trivia question, write us and send it in. He doesn't get to prepare. This is all right off the cuff. The first time you hear the question is the first time he hears the question. He doesn't get to use anything but his noggin to answer. I think he's going to get this. It's a good question. It's good, solid information, but I think he's going to know it. So
Yeah.
Well, now that you've said that, I'll completely blow it.
You're fine, Sam. You're
all
fine.
right, go for it.
All right. This is Carlos from San Isidro asking, what was the most common rifle used by U.S. soldiers in World War I?
Carlos from San Isidro?
San Isidro.
Yes.
Okay. What was the most common rifle used by U.S. soldiers in World War I? It depends on what you mean by most common. I love these nuanced questions like this because there are actually two answers. If the question,
I'm interested in that answer. Like, what else could it mean? But go ahead.
Well, I know one of these is the answer that he is asking for, but I need to give some background.
Okay.
Fired up.
When, the United States did not enter World War I until most of it was already over. So the United States had been pretty isolated from the affairs in Europe for much of its history up to that point. And accordingly, our military was not equipped to fight a big, huge blow-up war in Europe, the biggest war to that time. But there was arms production in the United States for the Allies. There were 3 factories in the U.S. producing Enfield rifles for the British. They weren't the short magazine Lee Enfield. They were a different pattern, but it was called people call it the Pattern 14. I'm not 100% clear on the actual official British nomenclature, but everyone calls them P14 Enfields. And they were chambered in .303. They were made at Remington. They were made at Eddystone, and I think Winchester as well. And we made I think 1 million of them for the British. We made huge numbers of them for the British because they couldn't make enough rifles for themselves. Then when in 1917, actually right before the U.S. entered World War I, there was some talk of sort of the writing was on the wall. It was expected that the U.S. would kind of have to enter the war pretty soon, and that our military was woefully unprepared. We had nowhere near the amount of equipment we needed. We had nowhere near the amount of men we needed. But you can recruit and train soldiers. It's a little harder to drum up weapons to give them. So the question was, well, we don't even have enough M1903 Springfields, which were the standard service rifle of the U.S. Army and U.S. Marine Corps at the time. How long will it take to spin up more production of M1903s versus is there a substitute standard we can introduce? So it was determined in historical hindsight correctly that it would be a lot easier to retool the P14 Enfield factories to produce basically the same thing but in .30-06. And that was adopted as the M1917. They were produced in greater numbers and used in greater numbers during World War I than M1903s, but most of the American Expeditionary Force in Europe used M1903s. The M1917s were primarily used stateside to free up 03 Springfields for use in the field. Because if you have 2 completely different rifles with basically no parts interchangeability other than the ammunition and the stripper clips on which the ammunition came loaded, you could have some issues of if a guy with an Enfield has an extractor break in the field, then he can't take an extractor out of the spare parts supply for M1903s and vice versa. So the M1917s were kept almost exclusively stateside. Some did make it to Europe, but most of them were kept stateside so that the American Expeditionary Force could use 1903s almost exclusively. So there are your two answers. It depends on what you mean by most used service rifle. Was the question most used or standard?
So you're saying that okay, you pretty much you said it real clear.
He said every single thing in this answer and a lot more.
I know.
And more.
Well, read what Carlos from San Ysidro, read what his answer is.
I mean, literally, it's just a recap of what you said. Many would answer the 1903 Springfield. 75% of AES servicemen used the M1917 Enfield in 30-06. The M1917 Enfield was patterned after the British Pattern 14 in 303 British. By the end of the war, 10,000 M1917s were being produced every day.
Wait, does that line up? Did you guys say the same thing? I think you did, right?
I have a reference. I can look this up.
By the way, AES. Tell the kid where'd he go?
He took his jacket off. He's getting serious.
Oh wow.
He's getting excited.
This is where I learned most of what I know about the M1917.
Go for it.
Oh, I love
Bruce
it.
Canfield book. Canfield is a phenomenal small arms historian. He's one of the best authors in the space, and his books are pretty much the gold standard, not just for collectors, but also for people doing serious history research, because he consults a lot of primary sources. Now, I'm just going to take a cursory flip through here. I'm not going to sit here on camera for 15 minutes or whatever it'll take to find the actual answer. But
I think you should get like a shawl and sit in front of a fireplace and just read us the book.
Do we have a rocking chair around? Could we get you in a rocking chair?
While you're flipping through, why don't you?
Like a pipe.
Yeah, tell the kids at home what is an AES serviceman?
AEF, Foxtrot, not Sierra.
It says Sierra on here. I read it as stated, but I did literally look it up. I have a tab open.
AEF.
AEF.
Oh, because of yeah.
F
All right.
is forces.
AEF. Yeah. What is that? What is an AEF?
That was the contingent that the U.S. sent to Europe to fight in World War One.
Isn't that American Expeditionary Forces or something?
Yeah, American Expeditionary Force.
Yeah. I looked up what is acronym for AES servicemen, and the internet was like, we don't know what you're saying.
So it didn't try to correct you?
No. It actually gave me a NAVAIR website because there's a company called Affordable Engineering Services. Thought that was a little funny.
And what did they do? They just, I mean, why did they call it do you know much about that? Why did they call it the AEF? Why didn't they just say, hey, we sent the Army or we sent the Marine Corps? Why was it different back then?
I don't know exactly why the distinction was made, actually.
Great, Sam.
It might have been because American service members were usually under American command rather than being slotted in as one-to-one replacements just on the front under, say, French generals, for example, to replace their combat losses. But I don't know for 100% sure. And I actually, you know what? I might have made a mistake in my answer because the context in which I research a lot of historical military small arms is specifically a Marine Corps context because one of my clients is a Marine Corps magazine, the magazine of the Marines, Leatherneck. I might have misspoken as to who used them mostly.
Yeah, they're saying the AEF used M1917 Enfields. And
well, they used both for sure.
Yeah, I think he's saying many would say the 1903 Springfield, but he thinks 3/4 of them used the M1917.
Right. Yeah, it was a 25-75. 25 1903, 75 M1917.
I'm still looking through here, but I know for sure that the Marine Corps contingent had almost exclusively 1903s because of what I said earlier. But the reason I may have misspoken is that the Army might have been so hard up for arms that they were using a bunch of M1917s. Either way, I did correctly state that a lot more of them were produced than 03s for World War One.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, you definitely
I got it mostly right at the very least.
You got all the details right. The actual answer, who knows? But also, this guy may not know for sure that 75%
I think
of
he knows
AEF.
for sure. He probably looked in the same book I'm looking in right now.
Good old Carlos. Okay, so I think I don't think you got it right. Right? We decided you didn't get it right. You got
No,
it.
we got it right.
You got it right.
We think you got it
You
right.
got it right.
You did get it right.
Yeah.
All right. So the answer.
Well, ask Carlos. What does he say?
Carlos
M11.
says that it's not the 1903. It is the M1917 Infield, which was a British P14 converted from 303 British to 30-06. And the reason there were so many of them is they had, like you said, they had the factories, so they just retooled it, and boom, by the end of the war, they were producing 10,000 a day, which is a lot.
Well, Carlos, watch this segment, comment on it, and let us know if you think that you stumped Mike's nephew.
There you go. All right, Sam.
Oh,
anything?
I have a quote here, real quick,
All right.
from the
Go
book.
for it.
The first contingent of 14,000 doughboys arrived on June 26, 1917, and disembarked at the French port of Saint-Nazaire. I'm sure someone will correct my pronunciation.
That's right. No,
American troops arriving early in the war were armed with Model 1903 Springfield rifles, but as the inventory of Model 1917 rifles began to grow, more and more were issued. So the M1917, due to supply constraints, eclipsed the M1903 as the frontline rifle.
And
Wow.
they didn't want to use
In
some
the Army, not in the
namby-pamby
Marine Corps.
303 British. They wanted a good old-fashioned 30-06. Hoo-ha. Okay, cool, man. All right, thanks for the info. Good job, as always. Carlos, thank you so much for the question. It was very interesting. We learned a lot, and we had a good time doing it. So there you go. There's your segment.